A cold-hearted millionaire was never seen smiling, until he crossed paths with a flower girl whose simple gesture turned into his deepest secret admiration. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. A delicate dawn light filtered through the grayish clouds over the bustling city. In a cramped apartment on the outskirts, Lily Anderson, 24, was already awake, her slender frame outlined against the window as she carefully arranged her freshly cut flowers. The rose petals still carried beads of morning dew, and their scent filled the small living room with a fragile sweetness. For Lily, every bloom was a promise of hope and a means of survival. She tied them in little bouquets with ribbon scraps she had collected from thrift stores, each arrangement destined to find a home in the hands of strangers who might spare enough coins to help her support her sick grandmother. Her grandmother, Agnes, was stirring from her sleep in the other room, if that cramped, curtain-drawn corner could be called a bedroom. Agnes had been Lily's rock ever since her parents passed away in a car accident 10 years before. Though she had aged quickly under the stress of her ailments, Agnes's eyes still glowed with affection for her granddaughter. Lily approached her bedside, placing a small bouquet of lilies by the pillow, her grandmother's favorite flower, which had inspired her own name. "Another day, my Lily," Agnes said, her voice softened by time and medication. "You'll be careful out there, won't you?" Lily tucked a lock of her caramel-brown hair behind her ear. "I will, Grandma," she murmured, mindful not to wake the woman more than necessary. "Just rest, and I'll be back soon." As Lily made her way down the rickety stairs of their aging tenement building, she could already hear the city's heartbeat, traffic humming, vendors shouting, and horns blaring. She clutched her basket of flowers tightly, the metal handle cold against her skin. Another long day stood before her, hours in the crowded streets selling blooms to people who'd rush past, occasionally stopping to glance at her vibrant petals. Meanwhile, in a gleaming skyscraper downtown, 33-year-old Matthew Cole was slumped at his desk, staring at the city lights that were just beginning to wake. He was a millionaire CEO known for his impressive string of business acquisitions and a reputation that made headlines in every financial magazine. Yet behind that polished image and the envy of countless aspiring entrepreneurs, Matthew was wrestling with exhaustion and a gnawing sense of emptiness. His corner office on the 34th floor was furnished with sleek metal, glass decor, and minimalist artwork. Expensive suits hung in a private wardrobe, waiting for corporate luncheons and back-to-back investor meetings. But none of these luxuries could quell the restlessness inside him. His personal assistant, Claire, knocked politely. "Sir, the car is ready," she said, her voice respectful but efficient. "You have the board meeting in less than an hour." Matthew stood, ran a hand over his neatly styled dark hair, and glanced once more at the city below. In that moment, he didn't notice the crowd. He didn't see the individuals or their hardships. He just saw a labyrinth of concrete and steel, a place that had brought him success, but left him feeling disconnected. "Thank you, Claire," he answered, picking up his suitcase. "Let's get going." Within 30 minutes, Matthew was in the back seat of a luxury car, weaving through congested traffic. He hardly glanced at the morning chaos. Buses groaning to a halt, pedestrians rushing across crosswalks, and small vendors staking out corners to sell newspapers or candy. His mind was on the imminent meeting, the numbers he needed to present, and how to outmaneuver the new competitor that threatened his market share. At a busy intersection, the driver hit the brakes. Matthew looked up, annoyed by the sudden jolt. His gaze drifted past the tinted window, and that was when his eyes landed on someone across the street, a young woman with a basket of flowers. Her expression seemed determined yet gentle as she offered a bouquet to a passing couple. The couple turned her down, too rushed or disinterested to notice the beauty in her humble blossoms. For reasons Matthew couldn't explain, he felt compelled to keep watching. There was a delicate sadness in the woman's eyes, though she attempted a polite smile whenever someone glanced her way. She wore a simple pale blue dress that had clearly seen better days and a pair of worn flats. Her hair was tied back with a ribbon that might have once been bright pink, but was now faded by repeated use. He heard the honk of impatient drivers behind them, forcing his own driver to press forward. In seconds, the intersection changed and the woman with the flower basket disappeared from Matthew's sight. He exhaled, perplexed by his sudden pang of curiosity. Had he seen those eyes somewhere before? Or was it just the raw sincerity in her face that caught him off guard? "Everything all right, sir?" the driver asked, noticing that Matthew had turned around to look out the rear window. Yes, I'm fine," Matthew replied, slowly turning back and settling into his seat. For a moment, the unrelenting stream of phone calls and emails in his life lost importance. The image of that young flower seller lingered in his mind, although he didn't even know her name. Back on the street, Lily sighed as another potential customer hurried by without a glance. A few hours had passed since she left home, and she'd sold only 2 bouquets. She reminded herself she had to stay hopeful. The doctor's bills were piling up, and if she didn't come home with enough money, she wouldn't be able to pay for Agnes's next set of medications. She found a small patch of shade beneath a tall bank building and set down her basket, kneeling to check that her roses weren't wilting. As she fussed over them, her mind wandered to better days, a time when her parents had been alive, when her father used to regale her with stories of how each type of flower had a unique symbolism: roses for love, lilies for purity, daisies for innocence. She sighed, swallowing the wave of nostalgia. Right now, sentiment would only weigh her down. She needed to be practical to survive. She resumed her quest, weaving through the throngs of office workers on their lunch break. Lily moved gracefully, offering a polite greeting to each passerby. Some took a rose or two with an appreciative nod, others simply avoided eye contact. Eventually, she ended up in a small park near a modern office complex, a place frequented by well-dressed executives who escaped for a breath of fresh air between meetings. As Lily set her basket on a bench, she noticed the difference in how these professionals looked at her. Some regarded her with aloof amusement, as though her presence disrupted their polished environment. Others seemed to pity her. Occasionally, a kind-hearted soul would buy a bouquet, but the glances that followed reminded Lily of her social status. She was just a flower girl, struggling to get by. When a tall gentleman in a tailored suit approached, Lily stood up, greeting him softly. His cufflinks glinted in the midday sun, and his cologne hinted at wealth. "How much for the bouquet of lilies?" he asked, a neutral expression on his face. Her heart warmed a little at the mention of her favorite flowers. No matter how many times she sold them, they never lost their magic. "They're $10 for half a dozen, sir," she answered, trying not to let her voice shake with anticipation. $10 felt like a small fortune in that moment. He fished out his wallet, then handed her a crisp 20. "Keep the change," he said briskly, and walked off before Lily could even thank him. Meanwhile, in the mirrored conference room of Cole Innovations, Matthew concluded his presentation to the board. The air was thick with tension as the directors weighed the new direction he proposed, which involved a surprising shift toward philanthropic projects. Some of the older board members exchanged disbelieving glances. "Matthew," an older man said, loosening his tie, "are you sure about this pivot? We've always prioritized growth. Social initiatives? Well, they're good PR, but they don't guarantee the returns we need." Matthew folded his arms. He might have been physically in the boardroom, but his heart was not. He recalled the face of that flower girl from earlier, her eyes reflecting silent resilience. "I believe we're in a position to do more than chase the next contract. Our brand has enough weight. It's time we invest in the community, beyond tax write-offs." A murmur of discontent rose, but also curiosity from a few open-minded members. Claire took notes in the corner, her gaze flicking to Matthew in silent support. She had never seen him quite like this. Passionate, but about something that wasn't purely financial. After a round of debate, the board agreed to revisit the subject at the next quarter's meeting, but the tension in the room indicated that Matthew's proposition was far from unanimously accepted. He exited the conference room, feeling the heavy weight of corporate pushback. While waiting at the elevator, he stared at his phone, mindlessly scrolling through news updates. His gaze caught a social media post about small urban vendors, featuring a snippet about a local florist's corner. He felt a jolt of recognition, as if it might be the same intersection he'd passed that morning. The elevator doors slid open, and Matthew stepped inside, resolving that if he ever saw that flower girl again, he would stop and perhaps buy flowers. Not because he needed them, but because something about her had touched a chord within him, a faint echo of empathy he had long suppressed. Little did he know that forces beyond a mere intersection were at play. Lily's gentle spirit, her unwavering determination to provide for her grandmother, would soon collide with Matthew's carefully controlled world of wealth and corporate empires. And in that collision, the seeds of secret admiration would begin to grow, proving that sometimes fate weaves connections in the most unexpected places. Would you like me to continue with Section 210.01 Pro? Você disse yes. O ChatGPT disse: solicitação de O1 Pro Mode. Pensou por 2021 Section 210. Lily hadn't expected the day to turn so quickly. After an exhausting morning of near-constant rejection, she found a fleeting sense of relief when that passing businessman gave her extra money for the lilies. A tiny spark of hope lit up inside her. Maybe she would sell enough to cover her grandmother's prescriptions that week. Still, she remained cautious. One kind gesture wouldn't sustain them for long. By noon, the heat of the city intensified. The exhaust from cars and buses clung to the stagnant air, forming a light haze. Lily decided to walk to a part of town known for its modern cafes and fashionable boutiques, hoping the people there might be in the mood to brighten their day with fresh flowers. With each step, her mind tugged back to her grandmother's health. At times, she worried about how to stretch her meager earnings between groceries and medicine. There had been days when she'd gone without lunch to ensure Agnes had the pills she needed, but Lily never complained. Love, she believed, made sacrifices feel worthwhile. She quickened her pace through a cobblestone side street, balancing her basket on her arm. Though the sun bore down, she kept her head high and her thoughts on the positives. She had sold enough bouquets that morning to at least buy Agnes's refills for the next couple of days. Maybe she'd even manage a small treat for her grandmother, some fruit or a piece of her favorite caramel fudge. As she turned the corner, the street opened onto an upscale plaza. Natural stone planters overflowed with manicured bushes, and glass storefronts displayed designer clothes. Lily smiled politely at the security guard who watched her with a skeptical glance, clearly unsure whether to allow a street vendor among these high-end shops. She stayed near the plaza's edge, setting her basket on the ground with care. A few passers-by slowed, eyeing her flowers. "Morning," Lily chirped softly, giving a small wave. "Could I interest you in some fresh roses or gerbera daisies?" A tall woman in a navy blue business suit paused. For a moment, Lily thought she might finally have a sale, but the woman glanced at her phone and hurriedly shook her head, as if to say she was late to a meeting. Lily exhaled but forced a smile. She knew better than to be discouraged so easily. Moments later, an older gentleman lingered. He studied the burst of color in Lily's basket, then ran a hand over his neatly trimmed mustache. "I'll take a bouquet of your best," he said, pulling out a wallet. Lily brightened. "Certainly, sir. How about these pink tulips? They're fresh from a greenhouse just outside the city." The man nodded, apparently charmed by Lily's gentle pitch. After handing over the bills, he accepted the flowers with a pleasant nod. "You've got a good spirit, young lady. Keep it up." Relief coursed through Lily as she tucked the money carefully into a pocket of her skirt. Another successful sale. She smiled, grateful for any kindness. Meanwhile, only a few blocks away, Matthew was wrapping up a brief lunch meeting with a prospective partner. The restaurant was modern and chic, polished marble floors, minimalist decor, and a staff trained in the art of subtle flattery. The meeting itself had been cordial, if a bit standard. Projections, future expansions, mergers. Yet Matthew found his attention drifting to thoughts and images beyond the corporate slides. The resilience in that flower girl's eyes that morning, the small display of hope she carried in each bouquet. "Matthew, I believe this collaboration will be beneficial," the partner was saying, smiling broadly as he tucked a branded pen into his inner pocket. "Your philanthropic pivot is unexpected, but it's generating a positive buzz, especially among younger consumers." Matthew sipped his sparkling water, acknowledging the words with a slight nod. "I'm pleased to hear it. We want to do more than just turn a profit, at least I do," he said, surprising even himself with the sincerity in his tone. His assistant, Claire, kept a discreet eye on him from the end of the table. She noticed how he seemed preoccupied, as if waiting for something or someone unseen. For Matthew, it was odd to feel his mind so distant from the million-dollar decisions that had always demanded his focus. Once the meeting concluded, he stepped outside, greeted by a fresh wave of summer heat. He pulled his car key fob from his pocket but paused, scanning the plaza ahead. It was a random inclination, a tug in his chest that urged him to walk instead of simply getting in the car. "Cancel the car for now," he told Claire quietly. "I'll text you when I'm done." She gave him a quizzical look but nodded, slipping away to follow the instruction. For reasons Matthew chose not to examine too closely, he strolled across the plaza. His polished shoes clacked gently on the concrete as tourists snapped photos of the sculpted fountains. He didn't expect to find Lily, not really. It was a big city after all. But a flicker of curiosity led him onward, as though his subconscious refused to let go of the memory of her face. On the opposite side of the plaza, Lily sat perched on a low stone wall, counting her earnings. She'd sold more bunches than she initially expected that afternoon, a modest success. The hustle and bustle around her made her wonder if she should stay a while longer or head back to check on Agnes. She glanced up and saw a mother with a small child approaching, drawn by the bright flowers. Lily hopped off the wall and offered a warm greeting. The little boy's eyes lit up at the sight of the colorful display. Eventually, the mother purchased a cheerful bunch of yellow daffodils. Lily handed the bouquet over with a genuine smile, earning the child's shy wave in return. As the mother and son departed, Lily noticed a figure in a crisp shirt and dark slacks moving among the passers-by. He seemed oddly familiar. Even from the side, she recognized the confident posture she'd glimpsed earlier in some passing car. Could it really be that same man? She wasn't sure. People in expensive clothes had a certain look about them, poised, unhurried, guarded. She tried not to stare as he scanned the area, almost as if searching. She moved her gaze back to her basket, fussing with the floral arrangements. If it was the same man from the intersection, then he was likely just another busy executive. Even so, she felt a curious flutter in her stomach, a nervousness without explanation. It wasn't every day she saw someone from a tinted luxury car wandering in her territory on foot. Matthew drew closer without noticing Lily at first. He was caught up in the scene, the strolling couples, the fountain mist drifting through the sunlight, the occasional vendor hawking souvenirs. Then a soft voice reached his ear. "Fresh flowers here." He paused mid-step, turning to spot where the voice came from. Under the partial shade of a flowering tree, there she was, her basket set near her feet, and that same earnest expression on her face. It was indeed the same flower seller from this morning. For a fleeting moment, Matthew hesitated. He felt oddly anxious, as if he were a teenager about to ask someone to dance. Ridiculous, he chided himself. He was a successful CEO, used to commanding boardrooms full of stern-faced executives. Approaching a stranger, especially a simple flower vendor, shouldn't stir this sense of unease. Gathering his composure, he crossed the plaza. Each step brought him closer to Lily, whose eyes lifted to meet his. She didn't speak, but her gaze flickered with recognition. "Hello," Matthew said, voice quieter than he intended. "I saw you this morning near the finance district. You sell flowers, right?" The corners of Lily's mouth tugged upward in a polite smile. "Yes, sir," she replied, nodding. "I move around different parts of the city to find customers." Matthew let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. I never got a chance to buy any earlier." He glanced at the neat arrangement in her basket, marveling at the subtle details, how the blooms were carefully chosen to complement one another in color and texture. "Do you have a bouquet that you recommend?" Lily studied him for a moment. She wasn't used to well-dressed businessmen soliciting her opinion about which bouquet to choose. Usually, if a man in a suit approached, he merely barked a price and rushed off. Still, she appreciated the question. "I have some lovely wildflowers mixed with lavender sprigs, something bright but gentle. Or if you prefer something more traditional, I have roses tied with baby's breath." "Wildflowers," Matthew answered, surprising himself with his quick response. Maybe it was the idea of something vibrant and unpolished that appealed to him after so many years in pristine boardrooms. Lily deftly picked out a bunch of wildflowers she'd arranged that morning: poppies, daisies, bits of lavender. She wrapped them in a simple brown paper, tied with a bit of twine. "That'll be $12, she said softly, her voice tinged with pride in her craft. Matthew pulled out his wallet. Used to fancy lunches and gold cards, he realized he only had larger bills. He handed her a 20. "Keep the change," he said, echoing the gesture of that earlier businessman. But Lily wasn't quick to pocket it. "Thank you," she murmured, carefully accepting the cash. For a second, she seemed torn about something, and Matthew wondered if she might refuse. Yet practicality won out. She needed the money, after all. Tucking it away, she offered him a nod of genuine gratitude. Before he could say anything more, a beep from his phone jolted him back to reality. He fished it out of his pocket and saw an urgent message from Claire about a contract that needed immediate attention. In the swirl of corporate obligations, the sense of calm he'd just felt was suddenly disrupted. Sorry, I have to take care of this," Matthew said, glancing from the screen to Lily. It struck him that he didn't want to just vanish again, not after finally speaking to her. "If you're here tomorrow, maybe I can buy more flowers." Lily offered a gentle smile, partly puzzled by his sudden awkwardness. "Tomorrow, yes. I'll probably be around. Good luck with your work, sir." He nodded and stepped away, bouquet of wildflowers in hand, feeling an odd warmth flicker in his chest. Why had that simple exchange felt so meaningful? Sure, he'd purchased 100 things on any given day, coffee, clothes, or gifts for colleagues, yet never felt anything like this. Once Matthew was out of earshot, Lily exhaled, letting herself relax. She noticed her pulse was racing and she gently pressed a hand against her cheek, which felt slightly warm. How strange, she thought, that a random customer could stir such an effect, especially a suited businessman who paid too much and seemed a bit lost in his own world. But as soon as the thought came, Lily shrugged it off. She had more pressing concerns. Grandma Agnes would be waiting at home with her medication schedule and a worried heart. Lily knew she should be grateful for any extra money coming in. If that meant crossing paths with random, well-dressed strangers who turned out to be kinder than most, so be it. When Lily finally arrived home, the sun was dipping low, bathing the sky in pale gold. She climbed the creaking stairs, careful not to jostle her basket of leftover flowers. The moment she unlocked the door, she heard a familiar cough. Grandma Agnes was awake, likely straining to look out the small window above her bed. "Grandma?" Lily called softly. "I'm back." Agnes's lined face lit up as Lily appeared in the doorway. Despite her obvious fatigue, she mustered a warm smile. "Hello, dear. Did you do well today?" Lily nodded, setting down her things. Better than usual, actually. I managed to pay for your medicine at the pharmacy, and there's still enough for a decent dinner." Agnes's eyes shone with gratitude. "You're so good to me, child." It took Lily a few minutes to help her grandmother to a small wooden chair by the window, where she often sat to watch the neighborhood go by. While Lily busied herself in their tiny kitchen nook, really just a corner with a sink, hot plate, and a mini-fridge, Agnes spoke up. "Sometimes, Lily, I worry that you sacrifice too much of yourself just to care for me." Lily paused, turning to look at the woman who had raised her from childhood. "You never think that. You gave me everything when I had no one else. This is the least I can do to repay that love." Agnes accepted that answer, but her gaze was thoughtful. She eyed Lily's tired posture, the faint circles under her eyes, and the way her shoulders stayed tense from carrying the weight of survival on fragile limbs. "Just promise me," Agnes said finally, in a voice that trembled with emotion, "you won't let hardship keep you from looking for happiness. You're young, Lily. You deserve more than an existence of only work and worry." Lily's throat constricted slightly. She forced a light laugh to soften the mood. "Me? Don't you worry, Grandma. I'm happy enough whenever I see your smile." Her grandmother nodded, but there was a tinge of sadness in her eyes. She recognized Lily's tendency to hide her longings behind a veil of stoic determination. Not too far away, Matthew found himself in his penthouse apartment, a sleek living space filled with modern furniture and panoramic windows overlooking the city skyline. The bouquet of wildflowers he'd bought from Lily lay on his kitchen counter, a stark contrast to the polished surfaces. He set down his briefcase and the stack of documents that demanded his attention, then focused on the flowers. He rummaged through a cabinet until he found a tall glass vase typically reserved for the occasional corporate gift. Filling it with water, he placed the wildflowers inside, adjusting the stems until they looked just right. A faint swirl of lavender and daisies greeted him, giving the room a burst of quiet vibrancy. For a while, he simply stood there, gazing at them. Their simple beauty pulled his thoughts to the woman who sold them. He realized he didn't even know her name. Yet, in a single day, she had made him rethink the monotony of his routine. Matthew thought back to his earlier board meeting, the tension about his proposed philanthropic initiatives. He envisioned the CEO he'd been, a man always chasing numbers and expansions, and weighed that against the subtle revelation he felt each time he thought about the flower girl's unwavering spirit. He glanced around his immaculate penthouse with its designer furniture and statement art. None of it moved him like that fleeting conversation. What was it about her that resonated so deeply? Was it her quiet resilience, her refusal to break under life's pressures? Or maybe it was the unspoken loneliness he sensed in her eyes, a feeling that, ironically, he also recognized in himself. Shaking off those reflections, he decided he needed fresh air. The moment he stepped out onto his balcony, the evening breeze kissed his face. Traffic glimmered below like 1,000 restless fireflies. The city was alive, just as Lily was, somewhere out there, probably finishing dinner or preparing for another early start. Unexpectedly, Matthew felt an urge to share something good with her, a gesture, but the impulse seemed absurd. They were strangers. She likely had her own circle of loved ones, her own burdens that he couldn't solve with casual generosity. Still, he found himself thinking, tomorrow I'll go back. I'll buy more flowers, maybe even talk to her about how she arranges them, how she learned her trade. It didn't matter if it was a rational plan or not. He just knew he wanted to see her again. Tomorrow, he thought, the slightest hint of a smile forming. Maybe tomorrow he'd also figure out why his heart felt lighter, as though the weight he'd carried for so long had shifted, even if just by a fraction. Would you like me to continue with section 310? O1 Pro. Você disse yes o ChatGPT disse. Solicitação para o O1 Pro. Pensou por 2 meses de 17's section 310. Morning light streamed through the worn curtains of Lily's small apartment. She sat on the edge of her makeshift bed, an old mattress on the floor, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Though she had risen before dawn, the air already felt thick and humid. Outside, the city's pulse was building. Honking cars, rumbling buses, and the routine clamor of people starting another day. She glanced at her grandmother, still dozing in the corner room. Agnes's breathing was labored, but calmer than usual, an indication that last night's dosage of medicine had helped. A wave of relief swept over Lily, for now they were managing. With a stretch and a soft yawn, she prepared for what she assumed would be another day like any other. Little did she suspect that a single conversation yesterday had already begun to alter her path. Lily slid into the kitchen nook, her bare feet whispering across the cool floor. She filled a kettle with water from the sink and set it to heat on the hot plate. While the kettle warmed, she double-checked the bundle of flowers she'd carefully wrapped the night before in damp cloths. They were an assortment: daisies, miniature sunflowers, carnations, and a handful of lavender sprigs. Each bloom was in prime condition, ready to be sold. Her thoughts drifted to the stranger from yesterday, the businessman who had stopped by not once but twice in a single day. She recalled how uncertain he'd seemed, how he'd fumbled for words even though he wore that crisp suit. It was so unlike the other executives she'd encountered, who were mostly brusque or indifferent. There was a subtle gentleness in him, as if the person behind the well-tailored clothes was still discovering something about himself. She was thinking about this, almost absent-mindedly, when the kettle whistled. Agnes stirred from the other room at the sudden noise. Lily left the flowers on the table and hurried to check on her grandmother. She found her already sitting up, hair still disheveled, a warm but weary smile on her face. "Morning, Grandma," Lily said softly. "I'll make you some tea. Did you sleep all right?" Agnes patted Lily's hand, her own knotted fingers trembling slightly. "Yes, child. I dreamed about your parents. They were in a field of lilies, calling us to join them. A nice dream, I suppose." A heavy pang squeezed Lily's chest at the mention of her parents. She tried to keep her expression serene. "I'm glad it was pleasant," she said, smoothing Agnes's thinning hair. "I'll bring you breakfast, then get going for the day. I won't be far, and I'll check on you at lunchtime if I can." Agnes nodded, her eyes gentle but concerned. "Take care, Lily girl, and remember what I said. Look out for your own heart, too." Lily forced a reassuring smile. "Yes, Grandma," she promised, though she felt the familiar pang of anxiety about balancing her own well-being with the demands of survival. She made a simple breakfast, oatmeal with a drizzle of honey, then guided her grandmother through her morning medications. Once Agnes seemed settled, Lily changed into a neat, modest outfit, a short-sleeved blouse and a long skirt. She fastened her hair in a loose braid, then gathered her flowers, checking each one before placing them into a wicker basket lined with damp cloth. With a kiss on Agnes's cheek, Lily stepped into the corridor, descending the worn steps of the building and bracing herself for the swarm of city life. Outside, the sun's heat wrapped around her like a blanket. She started off toward the financial district, deciding to catch the early wave of office workers in hopes that someone might buy a small bouquet for a co-worker's birthday or a last-minute client meeting. It was a strategy Lily had honed over time, anticipating brief moments of generosity in the hurried routine of corporate employees. "Sir, you have a breakfast appointment with the CFO in 20 minutes, Claire reminded Matthew as she stepped into his office. She stopped abruptly, noticing him standing at the window, gazing down at the street below. The early sunlight glinted off the mirrored buildings, reflecting onto his thoughtful face. On his desk, a small glass vase still held the wildflowers he'd bought from Lily the day before, their petals vibrant in the stark corporate environment. Matthew straightened his shoulders, turning to face Claire. "Right," he said, clearing his throat. "I won't be long. Let's wrap up quickly with the CFO so we can move on." Though her expression remained polite, Claire couldn't help but notice how preoccupied her boss seemed. "Will do, sir," she answered, stepping out. Matthew ran a hand through his hair and cast one more glance at the bouquet. He'd told Lily he might look for her again, but he wondered if that had been just a polite remark or if it carried more weight than he first realized. His thoughts felt divided between the responsibilities of the day, meetings, contracts, investor updates, and a strange tug of anticipation that made him want to sneak away to the plaza just to see if she was there. He forced himself to focus, heading toward the executive conference room where the CFO awaited him. The meeting was brief but intense. Discussions of profit margins, projected gains, and the philanthropic program Matthew insisted on expanding despite the board's skepticism. Every so often, an image of Lily's earnest face nudged its way into his mind, making it harder to concentrate on the spreadsheets glowing on the screen. After signing off on a handful of budget adjustments, Matthew thanked the CFO and made a swift exit. Claire was standing by, tablet in hand, ready to reel off the next item on his schedule. "You have a video call with the marketing team in half an hour, then a working lunch with the foreign investors at noon," she said, glancing up expectantly. Matthew hesitated. The schedule was packed, but he wasn't sure how to explain that he wanted to slip away for something that sounded so trivial in the realm of high-stakes business. "Claire," he began, adjusting his shirt collar, "reschedule the marketing call to this afternoon and have the lunch meeting moved back by half an hour." She blinked, confusion flashing across her face. "May I ask why, sir?" He inhaled slowly, scanning for a plausible explanation. "I just have an errand to run, something personal." Though it was unusual for Matthew to shuffle around obligations without a business-related reason, Claire decided not to pry. She offered a polite nod. "I'll make the arrangements, sir." Seconds later, Matthew was descending in the elevator, ignoring the slight knot of anxiety in his stomach. He reasoned that stepping out for half an hour would hardly dent the day, yet a feeling of guilt, maybe even embarrassment, lurched inside him. Would a grown man of his position really drop everything just to find a flower girl on a busy sidewalk? He brushed away the self-consciousness as the elevator doors opened to the main lobby. He stepped outside, breathing in the city air. The swirl of traffic and footsteps enveloped him immediately, but he pressed forward, turning down a side street that led toward the finance district's boundary. She had been in that zone before. He recalled it from the day prior, the moment their eyes first locked while he sat in the back seat of his car. Walking instead of taking his usual chauffeured ride, Matthew felt oddly vulnerable among the clusters of hurried strangers. Suitcases rolled across the pavement. Phone conversations buzzed around him, and the faint smell of fresh coffee drifted from street carts. He caught sight of a few flower sellers scattered about, an elderly woman hawking roses, a teenage boy with 2 bright carnations, but not Lily. He strode another block, pulse picking up speed from a curious mix of excitement and nervousness. When he finally spotted a young woman with a wicker basket, he slowed. At first glance, she was turned away, conversing with someone, but then she shifted, and he recognized her. Lily. She wore a pale blue blouse this time, and the sun played on the gentle waves of hair that framed her face. She was holding a bouquet of pink daisies for a middle-aged couple who appeared to be tourists. The man in that couple handed over some cash, and Lily offered a thankful bow of her head. When the transaction ended, she tucked the money into her skirt pocket and turned, meeting Matthew's gaze as if sensing his presence. The flicker of recognition in her eyes was immediate. Her lips parted slightly, and she gave him a smile so genuine it made his chest tighten. He stepped closer, adjusting his posture to appear calm, though inside he felt anything but. "Hello again," he said, noticing the slight catch in his own voice. "I was hoping I'd find you." Lily's smile broadened, a bit of her shyness evident. "Good morning, sir. I wasn't sure if... Well, it's nice to see you." She set aside her basket and brushed a stray wisp of hair from her forehead. "Did you need more flowers?" Matthew glanced at the blooms in her basket, vibrant under the late morning sun. "Yes, He paused, realizing he hadn't actually thought this far ahead. "I'd like to buy another bouquet, if you have a recommendation." Her gaze flicked to the array of blossoms. "I have some fresh carnations and daisies. Or perhaps you'd like these," she said, lifting a cluster of bright marigolds, the color reminiscent of a summer sunset. "They're cheerful and have a longer vase life." He studied the marigolds, their bold hue seeming to pulse with energy. "They're perfect," he answered, smiling at how easily she guided him. "I trust your taste." While she arranged the flowers into a neat little bouquet, he sneaked a moment to appreciate her careful hands and the delicate way she handled each stem. He fished his wallet from his pocket. She quoted him a modest price, and Matthew nearly repeated the gesture of giving her a larger bill with instructions to keep the change. But remembering how Lily had hesitated before, he instead counted out the exact amount, hoping to ease any discomfort. "Thank you," she said, handing over the bouquet. For a moment she seemed poised to say something else, but she bit her lip instead, as if unsure whether it was appropriate. Matthew swallowed, feeling the urge to extend the conversation. "How's your grandmother?" The second the word slipped out, he worried she might be startled that he'd remembered her mention of needing to buy medicine, but he recalled every detail of their short exchange. Like how she clutched her basket with a determined expression when she said she had to support her grandmother. Lily's eyes flickered with gentle surprise. "She's about the same," she replied softly, though her voice held a hint of relief. "I mean, she's stable, but the medication is expensive. Thank you for asking." He gave a small, encouraging nod. "I'm glad she's stable. If you need anything—" He paused, unsure how to phrase an offer of help without sounding intrusive or presumptuous. "Well, I mean, don't hesitate to let me know." Her cheeks colored slightly. She recognized that to him, money might be no issue, but for her, pride and caution were deeply rooted. She didn't want pity. "Thank you. But I wouldn't want to impose," she murmured. Their conversation hung there for a second, each unsure how to transition. The city hummed around them, pedestrians, cars, the incessant buzz of mid-morning. Finally, Lily cleared her throat, tucking a stray flower in the basket. "I'll be here again tomorrow," she offered almost timidly, as though acknowledging that he might want to find her again. "If you need more flowers." Matthew exhaled with a light laugh that wasn't unkind. "I seem to be collecting them at a rapid pace, yes." His gaze lingered on the blossoms in his hand. "But they're worth it." A silence fell between them, not awkward but charged with a warmth neither fully understood yet. Lily eventually dropped her gaze, noticing another potential customer approaching from behind. She smiled gently at Matthew, lifting her basket to indicate she needed to resume her work. "Thank you again," he said softly, then stepped aside. As Lily turned her attention to the new customer, Matthew lingered just a moment longer, letting the reality of this gentle connection sink in. Then he made his way down the street, bouquet of bright marigolds tucked under his arm. He felt as though each step carried him into fresh territory, a place he'd never explored, where emotional honesty mingled with the spreadsheets of daily life. By the time Lily sold her last bouquet of the day, the sun had shifted westward, dipping behind tall buildings. Her feet were sore and her throat felt dry from speaking to passers-by. Despite the physical strain, her spirits remained unexpectedly high. One reason she knew was that singular conversation with the CEO who seemed so out of place in her world. Another reason was the handful of successful sales she'd made, enough to pay for Agnes's medicine through the end of the week plus a little extra for groceries. She carefully stowed her earnings in a zippered pouch and paused to count the bills once more. Yes, this would be enough. A genuine smile warmed her face. Her grandmother would be thrilled, maybe even more at the fact that Lily wouldn't have to skip another meal just to stretch finances. As she walked back to her apartment, Lily found herself running through daydreams she'd normally brush aside. Little domestic fantasies about being secure, about not having to hustle every day in the city. She imagined her grandmother healthy again, or at least comfortable enough to enjoy life without constant worry. She even allowed herself the stray thought about Matthew, about how, behind the carefully pressed suits, he seemed kind, maybe even lonely. She wondered what it would feel like if someone like him truly wanted to be part of her life. But such musings felt almost too indulgent. A girl selling flowers to survive had no place longing for a wealthy CEO. She shook her head, chastising herself for letting flights of fancy take over. Daydreams wouldn't fill the fridge or cover hospital bills. Her father had taught her to hope, yes, but also to be realistic. And reality was that she had a grandmother who depended on her, an income that came and went with the day's weather, and a city that made no exceptions for a poor flower girl. Within the hour, she reached home. The apartment's familiar scents, cooking spices, old wood, the faint aroma of dried flowers, immediately soothed her. She slipped inside, calling out softly, "Grandma, it's me." Agnes replied from her chair near the window. When Lily saw the older woman's face, she realized Agnes looked slightly better than she had that morning, still frail, but not as ghostly pale. "I kept your soup warm," Agnes said, gesturing to a pot on the hot plate. "A neighbor dropped by earlier, asked if we needed anything. I told them we're fine, but it was sweet of them." Lily knelt beside her grandmother, placing the leftover daisies in a makeshift vase, a clean jar she'd saved. "I sold almost everything," she reported with a hint of satisfaction. "This should cover the next round of your medication." Agnes beamed, tears brimming in her kind eyes. "You're a treasure, Lily girl. I wish I could do more to help you." "It's enough that you're here," Lily insisted, trying to keep her voice steady. She hugged Agnes gently, mindful of her fragile frame. "And guess what else? I met that businessman again, the one who bought my flowers yesterday morning." Agnes's expression turned curious. "Oh, he came back?" "Yes, he came looking for more flowers, I think," Lily replied, a slight flush creeping onto her cheeks. "He's polite, quiet, and he asked about you." Her grandmother's face softened with affection. "He asked about me? That's very kind, dear." Lily nodded, fidgeting with a stray thread on her skirt. "I mean, it probably doesn't mean much. Maybe he's just polite or feels sorry for me, but it was nice to talk to him." Agnes rested her hand lightly on Lily's. "You deserve nice people in your life. Don't dismiss it so quickly." Lily pressed her lips together, a mix of hope and caution stirring inside her. She chose not to continue that topic, instead busying herself with the soup. But the thought lingered. Could it be that their chance meetings meant anything? Or was it just her lonely heart, grasping for companionship in a world that often felt so isolating? She ladled soup into 2 bowls, one for herself, another for Agnes, and brought them to the small table. Evening rays cast a golden halo across the walls, transforming their worn surroundings into something almost comforting. As they ate, Agnes spoke of mundane things, a snippet of news she'd overheard on the radio, a memory from Lily's childhood. Lily responded in kind, but behind the gentle conversation, her mind wandered back to a pair of thoughtful eyes and the fragile promise they implied. On the other side of town, Matthew was finishing up a late business call from his office. The overhead lights buzzed quietly, and the once busy floor was nearly empty. Most employees had clocked out hours ago, leaving him to wrestle with remaining obligations. As he hung up the phone, he realized how dark it had gotten outside. He packed away his laptop, glancing at the bright marigolds Lily had sold him. They were perched in a sleek vase, a warm glow of color amid the sterile environment. He found himself smiling at them, feeling oddly grateful for a simple joy that cut through the day's stresses. On his way to the elevator, he texted Claire, letting her know he'd see her in the morning. The elevator descended smoothly, and soon he stepped into the parking garage, the echo of his footsteps bouncing off concrete walls. Once in his car, he leaned his head back for a moment, wrestling with a swirl of unexpected reflections. He'd grown used to a life where transactions were made in boardrooms, where relationships were formed for business gain, and where personal interactions were measured by mutual benefits. Yet the young woman who sold him flowers for pocket change had shown more sincerity in a few brief exchanges than he'd often felt in entire deals worth millions. That truth weighed on him now, tugging at the corners of his conscience. There was something about Lily, her resilience, the way she carried the weight of her grandmother's health on her slender shoulders, that inspired his admiration. It was also a reminder: money alone couldn't buy happiness. Her struggles were real, but so was her sense of purpose and quiet joy in the small moments. Matthew started the engine, the low hum filling the car. He maneuvered through the nightly traffic, unsure how to classify his feelings. Maybe it was just curiosity for someone so different from him, or empathy for her situation. But deep down, he couldn't dismiss the flutter in his chest whenever he imagined seeing her again. By the time he reached his penthouse, the city lights shimmered like a scattered mosaic far below. He dropped his keys onto a glass table, noticing how lonely the large space felt. There was no friendly voice waiting for him here, no warm bowl of soup or genuine question about how his day had gone. Instead, there were unread emails, reminders for tomorrow's appointments, and the constant hum of an expensive refrigerator. He drifted to the kitchen, pulling out bottled water. His gaze landed on the marigolds he'd brought home earlier. He gently ran a finger over one bright petal, recalling how Lily had chosen them for their cheerful longevity. Even in the hush of his upscale apartment, he felt a strange sense of connection. It made him realize he'd never truly asked Lily about her own life. He only knew bits and pieces: her grandmother, her dedication to her craft, the sweet, hesitant way she smiled. Tomorrow, he thought, maybe I'll learn more. But how? She wasn't just some random vendor to buy from. He already understood the encounter was edging towards something personal. That notion both excited and unsettled him. Whatever it was, he resolved not to ignore it. If fate had set them on crossing paths again, then he intended to follow that thread, see where it led, even if it defied every logic he'd built his career upon. Perhaps it was time he stepped outside the safety of polished boardrooms and discovered a different kind of warmth in the city streets, guided by a certain flower girl and the resilience shining in her eyes. Would you like me to continue with section 410? O1 Pro. Você disse yes ao chat GPT disse solicitação de O1 Pro mode. Pensou por duas nesta section 410. The next morning dawned with a mellow glow, casting a gentle light through the thin curtains in Lily's cramped apartment. She found herself awake earlier than usual, her mind already busy with the day's challenges. A dull ache in her ankles reminded her of the extra hours she'd spent on her feet, but she forced herself to move, determined to squeeze out another successful round of sales. She reached for the plastic pitcher of water on the bedside table, sipping quietly so as not to wake her grandmother. In the corner, Agnes stirred, coughing a little but soon settling back into a shallow sleep. Lily exhaled softly, relieved she could buy another day's worth of medication. She steeled herself with that reminder. Each flower sold meant more security for Agnes's fragile health. Clutching the hem of her nightshirt, she allowed her thoughts to wander, inevitably landing on Matthew. Even the memory of him felt like stepping into a bright patch of sunshine on an otherwise overcast day. He had come looking for her more than once now, asking about her grandmother, buying bouquets he probably didn't need. Why? Lily's cheeks warmed as she recalled the earnest way he'd listened to her every word, how he'd asked if there was anything she required. But she reminded herself not to read too much into simple kindness. She had learned that genuine compassion from strangers could be rare. It was wise not to get her hopes up too high. Still, something gentle and stirring in her heart refused to quiet. In a city where she'd often felt invisible, his attention felt significant. Even so, the pressing realities of daily life beckoned. She rose, changing into a comfortable blouse and a long skirt. Her hair she combed carefully, tying it into a neat braid. By the time she guided Agnes through her morning medicine and shared a simple breakfast, Lily's mind was back in practical mode. She packed up the baskets of blooms she'd carefully tended overnight, refreshed their stems in water, and arranged them with the artistry she'd inherited from her father's teachings. One cluster of pale pink roses, another of cheery sunflowers, and a mixture of smaller wildflowers she'd foraged from a local greenhouse. Her wares looked vibrant, full of subtle life. "Try to rest today, Grandma," Lily said gently, smoothing a blanket over Agnes's legs. "I'll come home for lunch with something nice." Agnes's reply came in a raspy whisper. "Be safe, Lily girl. And if you run into that young man again, don't be afraid to speak your mind." Lily gave a small, shy laugh, pressing her lips together in a smile. "I'll keep that in mind, Grandma." With a parting wave, she slipped out the door, basket balanced on her arm. The corridor smelled of fried onions and stale cigarettes, as one neighbor was already cooking breakfast, and another had probably been smoking all night. She tiptoed past to avoid conversation, focusing on the day ahead. Outside, the sun was creeping higher, painting the sidewalks in a wash of gold. Lily decided to vary her route, perhaps exploring a slightly different area than the previous days. She wanted to catch the mid-morning crowd that often roamed near the city's cultural district, museum-goers, students, and office workers who frequented local cafes. Variety, she'd learned, was key to selling more than just a handful of bouquets. Yet, a faint voice tugged at her. Maybe she should at least pass by the finance district, a place where she might cross paths with Matthew. She found herself looking at her reflection in a shop window as she passed, wondering, absurdly, if she looked presentable enough, or if the day's humidity had already made her appearance too disheveled. Then she shook her head at her own vanity. He was just a kind customer, she told herself firmly, someone who took an interest in her flowers. Daydreaming about anything more was risky business. While Lily navigated the city's sidewalks, Matthew was holed up in an early conference call from his sleek corner office. The polished glass windows offered a panoramic view of a bustling metropolis, but his attention was largely consumed by the video feed on his screen. A group of overseas investors debated logistical details, each politely awaiting translation. As they talked, a wave of restlessness gnawed at him. He'd spent late nights preparing for this call, ensuring that no detail was overlooked. Yet, it was difficult to muster the same zeal he once had. His mind strayed to the memory of bright marigolds resting in a simple vase, to the flicker of gratitude on Lily's face when he'd asked about her grandmother. When the call concluded, Matthew sat back in his ergonomic chair, rubbing his temples. Claire, punctual as always, knocked lightly on the office door. "The board is expecting a status update on your philanthropic proposal at 10, she said, stepping inside. They requested more data on projected returns, both financial and social. I prepared additional slides if you'd like to review them." He offered a tight smile. "Thank you, Claire. Please send the slides to my tablet." She hesitated, eyes flicking to the second bouquet on his desk, a modest arrangement of daisies and carnations he'd purchased from Lily 2 days earlier. "Sir," she ventured, "if you don't mind me saying, you seem a bit preoccupied lately." Matthew gave a soft chuckle, more self-conscious than truly amused. "Do I?" he replied, turning the daisies gently so they'd face more sunlight. "Maybe I am. Too many projects at once, I guess." Claire sensed there was more to it than heavy workloads, but her professional boundaries prevented her from prying further. She nodded, discreetly exiting to let him gather his thoughts. Alone again, Matthew picked up his phone, pondering whether to slip out again later, just to glimpse Lily if luck allowed. The notion felt both irrational and oddly liberating. He caught sight of his reflection in the tinted window, a man in an impeccable suit, hair neatly styled, face betraying a certain impatience for life's routine. This shift in priorities baffled him as much as anyone. He, who had spent years chasing acquisitions, forging alliances, and building an empire, now found himself sidetracked by a young woman selling flowers on a busy street. He pressed his lips into a determined line. Maybe it wasn't as trivial as he feared. Maybe it was exactly the reminder he needed, that behind every business plan or corporate venture, there were humans with struggles, dreams, and quiet kindness. Perhaps Lily embodied something he'd lost sight of long ago: the humility of earnest work, the courage to keep going in the face of adversity. Glancing at the clock, Matthew decided after the board meeting he'd carve out an hour, no matter how packed his day was. He'd go for a walk. If it led him to Lily, so be it. If not, he'd at least step away from the sterile environment that threatened to consume him whole. For Lily, the morning started off slow. Near a bustling gallery, she sold a couple of posies to an elderly woman who said they were for her granddaughter's recital. A little while later, a pair of students bought a few daisies just because they claimed the flowers smelled like summer. Lily soaked up their carefree spirit, smiling as the students skipped away with bright petals in hand. She decided to move on, following a winding road lined with small boutiques. Now and then, someone would stop, but many simply passed, engrossed in phone calls or errands. Eventually, Lily reached a quaint square featuring a tall statue and a half-circle of benches. An old fountain gurgled water into a mossy basin, offering a gentle soundtrack to the midday calm. Setting her basket down, Lily tried to rest her aching feet. A mild breeze offered relief from the heat, rustling the leaves of a nearby tree. She thought about how Grandpa, whom she barely remembered, had once been a gardener. She imagined he'd be proud of her skill with flowers, wishing he were here to see how carefully she curated each bouquet. Her grandmother's words looped in her mind, echoing, "Don't be afraid to speak your mind." Could she have the courage to open up if the chance arose about her hopes and fears? She wasn't sure. In her world, raw survival often took precedence over emotional vulnerability. Yet a tiny voice urged her not to dismiss the possibility of forming a bond, even if it was with someone from a completely different walk of life. She was pondering these thoughts when a slight commotion stirred at the other end of the square. Glancing up, Lily's heart kicked. There he was. Matthew. Except this time he wore a simpler outfit. No tie, the collar of his shirt open at the neck. He scanned the square, pausing when their eyes locked. She noticed a flash of relief on his face as though he'd been searching. Without hesitation, he headed her way. Lily rose to greet him, trying to steady her voice against the flutter in her chest. "Good day, sir," she said quietly, tucking her hair behind her ear. "I didn't think I'd see you so soon." Matthew let out a soft laugh, a mix of awkwardness and gratitude. "I was hoping to run into you. I needed some air after a morning of meetings." He eyed the flowers in her basket, vibrant as ever. "How's business today?" "It's a bit slower," Lily admitted, "but I've sold enough to keep going. I can't complain." He nodded, shoving his hands into his pockets. "That's good. Maybe I'll help speed things up." He offered a small grin. "I'd like to buy another bouquet, something warm." She glanced down and selected a delicate mix, miniature sunflowers with sprigs of baby's breath. The sunflowers were smaller than typical, but their golden petals seemed to radiate the day's positivity. Lily deftly wrapped them in brown paper and tied a strand of burlap ribbon around the stems. "These might be to your taste," she said, handing the bouquet over carefully. "They're bright and they keep well in indirect sunlight." Matthew studied the flowers as though they were more than mere decoration, as though they held a secret. "Thank you," he replied, fishing out his wallet. This time, he matched her price exactly, adding just $1 extra. "Thank you for the tip," Lily said softly, though the real thanks hummed underneath, for how he noticed her, how he remembered details. They lingered, neither seeming in a rush to part ways. The noise of traffic faded slightly, replaced by the fountain's gentle trickle. Matthew cleared his throat as if steeling himself to speak. "I know we don't know each other that well, but I was wondering if maybe you'd—" He hesitated, scanning her face. "If you'd let me buy you a coffee or tea sometime. Not in a business sense, I mean. More like a break or a chance to talk. If you want." Lily's heart fluttered. She was caught off guard by the straightforward invitation, feeling a mix of excitement and caution. Could she allow herself a moment of indulgence, a respite from everyday trials? Her grandmother's voice came to mind again, urging her not to let life's hardships block the path to happiness. "That would be nice," she heard herself say, a soft smile warming her features. "But maybe in the afternoon, when the flowers are mostly sold, if that's all right." Matthew let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "Of course, whenever suits you." He nodded, almost shyly, and checked his watch. "I should probably head back, or Claire will hunt me down," he added with a self-deprecating chuckle. Before he turned to go, Lily spoke up, her voice more earnest than she expected. "Matthew, thank you. You've bought so many flowers. It really helps my grandmother. Just thank you." He met her gaze, sincerity etched across his face. "I'm glad I can help in some small way, Lily." With that, he offered a gentle wave, stepping away. She watched him leave, the bouquet of miniature sunflowers clutched in his hand, and felt a surge of gratitude and something else, a delicate sense of hope. Yes, they were strangers in many respects, but in small moments like these they felt like 2 points on a map that fate had decided to connect. Hours later, Lily's sales picked up slightly. She sold off most of her remaining stock before deciding to head home early. Her thoughts drifted to the idea of coffee with Matthew. Part of her worried about what people might say, seeing a young flower seller in threadbare clothes chatting with a polished businessman. But she brushed that anxiety aside, reminding herself she had the right to normal human connections, no matter her circumstances. She arrived at her apartment with fewer flowers left than usual, and that alone was a triumph. Agnes, awake and alert, welcomed Lily with a tired smile. After Lily helped her settle in for the evening, she recounted a bit of her day, leaving out certain details about her ongoing conversation with Matthew, partially because she was still sorting her emotions. "You look happy, dear," Agnes remarked, observing her granddaughter's relaxed posture. "You sold a good amount?" "Yes," Lily answered, placing a half-empty bouquet into a jar of water for the room. "And I might have a chance to take a small break tomorrow, share a cup of coffee with someone?" Agnes's eyes widened with gentle delight. "That's wonderful, Lily girl. You deserve some joy." She nodded, feeling a twinge of relief for the acceptance and encouragement. In the back of her mind, she hoped that stepping outside her comfort zone wouldn't lead to heartbreak. But for now, the mere possibility of something beyond her day-to-day struggles gave her a sense of expansion, like she was part of a bigger story than she'd dared to imagine. Even as the lights dimmed and Lily prepared for bed, her thoughts ran in loops of anticipation. The city outside continued its never-ending bustle, but in their small apartment, time felt suspended by this new wonder. She allowed herself a moment of longing, quietly acknowledging that there was something special about the man who kept showing up with a tender smile and a heart as genuine as the flowers he purchased. Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Matthew placed the miniature sunflowers on a windowsill, letting the fading daylight illuminate their petals. He stood there, gazing out at the skyline, the faint hum of traffic a distant soundtrack. Tomorrow he would arrange his schedule again, discreetly enough that no one noticed the effort. He didn't want to wait a week or even a few days. His heart pushed him forward more urgently than any board meeting had in recent memory. He realized with a hint of irony that the biggest deal unfolding in his life right now wasn't about corporate strategies or balancing financial sheets. It was about a genuine bond, one that transcended the barriers of wealth and status. He had no idea where it would lead, but for once he found the uncertainty both thrilling and grounding. Tomorrow, a cup of coffee, a shared conversation, maybe a corner table in a modest cafe. It seemed so simple, yet it felt monumental, because it was uncharted territory for him and for her. And sometimes, he mused, the smallest steps forward end up reshaping the entire path ahead. Would you like me to continue with section 510? O1 Pro? Você disse yes, o ChatGPT disse caminho possível. Pensou por do mem to 28's section 510 morning arrived with a gentle hush in Lily's apartment. She stirred from sleep before the first rays of sunlight broke through the window. In the adjoining room, her grandmother was still resting, her thin frame barely making a dent in the worn mattress. Lily rose carefully, not wanting to disturb her. A quiet excitement fluttered beneath her ribcage as she remembered Matthew's invitation. It had been so long since she felt anticipation for something other than paying bills or securing medicine. She slipped into her modest bathroom and splashed water on her face, studying her reflection in the chipped mirror. There were faint shadows beneath her eyes, a testament to years of early mornings and relentless city hustle. Even so, a newfound glow lingered in her expression, a subtle softness around her lips as though she carried a secret happiness. It felt odd, recklessly indulgent almost, to be looking forward to a simple coffee. But to Lily, it wasn't just about the beverage. It was about stepping into a moment that belonged to her alone, not overshadowed by survival or responsibility. She braided her hair neatly and chose a blouse with a tiny floral print. It was one of her nicer pieces, still second-hand but in good condition. She wanted to feel a bit more polished, even if it was just for a little while. In the kitchen nook, she made oatmeal for her grandmother. By the time Agnes awakened, Lily greeted her with a steaming bowl and a gentle smile. "Good morning," Lily said, helping Agnes sit up. Agnes peered at her granddaughter, noticing the small but significant changes. The neatly pressed blouse, the hint of color in her cheeks, the bright spark in her eyes. "You look lovely today, Lily girl. Are you meeting someone special?" Lily paused, warmth creeping up her neck. "It's just a short break I'm taking later, maybe. Someone offered to buy me coffee," she admitted quietly, as though speaking the words too loudly would shatter the fragile magic. Agnes nodded, her gaze kind. "That's wonderful." She reached out to pat Lily's hand. "Don't let guilt or worry stop you from enjoying it. You deserve to live a little too." Lily felt a squeeze in her chest. Her grandmother's support meant the world. "I'll try to remember that," she promised, leaning in to place a gentle kiss on Agnes's cheek. After ensuring her grandmother was settled with her morning pills, Lily gathered her flowers. She'd prepared 2 baskets, one with more traditional blooms like roses and carnations, and another with a mix of wildflowers, daisies, and sprigs of herbs. The day's plan was to sell as many as she could before the afternoon. If all went well, she'd find a lull in the day to slip away for that coffee. Outside, the city stirred to life. Dawn's soft glow stretched over high-rises and narrow alleys alike. Lily boarded an old bus that rattled through congested streets, keeping her baskets on her lap to protect the delicate petals. Each jolt made her clutch them tighter. When the bus finally dropped her off near the center, she hopped off, blinking against the brighter sunlight. Vendors were already out, hawking everything from breakfast pastries to phone chargers. She found a good spot by the entrance to a large office building, quietly greeting the security guard who had grown used to her presence over the past months. By 9, the crowd thickened, office workers dashing in, coffee in hand, or stepping out for a quick smoke. Lily offered friendly smiles, a soft greeting. "Fresh flowers?" Some hurried by with scarcely a glance. Others hesitated, then purchased a small bouquet to brighten their desks or hand off to a colleague with a birthday. Bit by bit, Lily's earnings grew. In between customers, she caught herself checking the time, heart fluttering at the thought of meeting Matthew. She chided herself to stay focused. Sales were vital after all, yet it was impossible to ignore the anticipation tingling just beneath her calm exterior. Not too far away, Matthew sat through a tense briefing with several board members. This time, the focus was on risk assessments for an upcoming expansion. He found himself fielding question after question, deflecting concerns and explaining why investing in philanthropic ventures could still yield intangible benefits: brand loyalty, public goodwill, employee satisfaction. But he sensed the skepticism in the room. One board member, with a stern expression and a tone reminiscent of a displeased headmaster, said, "We respect your vision, Matthew, but the numbers simply aren't as encouraging as we'd like. We can't pour money into projects that don't promise clear returns." Matthew inhaled deeply, reminded of how drastically different his perspective had become in recent weeks. "It's not only about immediate financial returns," he replied, carefully measuring his words. "Our brand is strong. We have the cushion to explore meaningful engagement with the community. It's an investment in long-term stability." He noticed Claire watching him with quiet empathy from across the table. She knew how important this was to him, but the older board members exchanged uneasy glances, not fully convinced. Eventually, the discussion was tabled for further review, a bureaucratic phrase that meant indefinite delay unless he could push harder. Exiting the meeting, frustration rolled over him. He loosened his tie, scanning his schedule. He'd cleared an hour in the early afternoon, determined to slip away from the corporate haze. Claire trailed behind him. "Sir," she said gently, "the CFO wants an update on the forecast for Q3. I can let him know you'll speak later this afternoon?" Matthew nodded, letting out a tense breath. "Yes, please. I'll be out around lunchtime." Claire gave a small smile. She didn't ask any questions, perhaps recognizing that her boss needed personal space for once. Matthew thanked her and stepped into his office, glancing at the daisies in the vase, a reminder of simpler things, a symbol of the small joys he'd been rediscovering. He checked his watch. Soon he'd slip out, and, if luck held, Lily would be done with her morning run of sales. Close to noon, Lily examined her dwindling stock and judged that she'd done well enough for the morning. Her feet ached from standing, but the knowledge that she'd sold most of her flowers lightened the fatigue. She decided to move toward a small park square near the finance district. It was lined with benches and anchored by a quaint cafe at one end. She remembered Matthew's invitation. Coffee. He had said, "sometime," without pinpointing a location. Still, her instincts nudged her. If he truly intended to meet, he might look for her near the place they'd first crossed paths, or a similarly bustling area. The cafe in the park was a popular midday spot for office workers seeking a brief respite. Balancing the basket on her arm, containing only a few remaining blooms, she navigated to the park. The cafe, with its ivy-covered trellis and sidewalk tables, offered a cozy charm amid the corporate skyline. Lily's heart thudded. She wasn't sure if Matthew would come at all, but she hoped to be in sight if he did. She selected a bench under a leafy tree, setting her basket beside her. The midday warmth was softened by a gentle breeze. People bustled around, grabbing lunches from food trucks, but Lily lingered, scanning the perimeter with a mixture of excitement and self-consciousness. Minutes ticked by, stretching until she began to wonder if she'd misinterpreted or if something had delayed Matthew. Just as she caught herself sinking into discouragement, a figure emerged from behind a group of corporate types leaving the cafe. She recognized him instantly. The careful posture, the crisp shirt, the distinct air of someone who might be in a hurry if not for deeper resolve. Matthew spotted her, relief blossoming across his face as he made his way through the small crowd. Lily stood, heart pounding in her ears. "Hi," he greeted, a bit breathless as though he'd power-walked from the next block. "I was worried I wouldn't find you." Her lips curved into a sincere smile. "Me too," she admitted, "but here we are." He gestured toward the cafe behind them. "Shall we? That is, if you still have time?" She nodded, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I do. Let's go." They moved toward the cafe entrance, passing by a scurrying waiter balancing trays of iced drinks. Inside, the space was cozy, small round tables, low chatter, and the inviting aroma of freshly ground coffee beans. Even though she sold flowers on city streets every day, Lily had rarely ventured into cafes. She usually couldn't afford such a luxury. A flicker of apprehension brushed her as she scanned the menu, noticing how a single latte cost nearly as much as several of her small bouquets. But then she remembered. Matthew had offered, and for once it was okay to let herself accept kindness. "Would you like a seat by the window?" a hostess asked politely. Matthew nodded. "Yes, please," he replied, glancing at Lily for confirmation. She gave a tiny nod. Soon they settled at a little table overlooking the park. Outside, sunshine played on the leaves, making dappled patterns of light and shadow on the pavement. "So?" Lily began, folding her hands on the table. "Thank you for this." Before she could finish, a waiter appeared to take their orders. Lily requested a simple coffee with milk, while Matthew asked for an Americano. A comfortable silence enveloped them after the waiter left, each taking in the unexpected familiarity of this moment. "This is nice," Matthew said quietly, as if reading her mind. Lily smiled in agreement, relaxing her posture. "It is." She looked around, half expecting curious stares. She in her humble blouse, he in his polished attire. But if anyone noticed, they didn't seem to care. The cafe bustled with its own midday rush, patrons occupied by laptops, phones, or quick chats with colleagues. Matthew turned his attention back to Lily, resting his forearms on the table. "So, how was your morning? Did you sell a lot?" "Yes, actually," she replied, a hint of pride creeping into her voice. "I sold most of my stock before noon. That doesn't happen very often." "I'm glad," he said warmly. "You must be very talented at this, not just with selling but with arranging them. Every bouquet I've gotten from you is different and, well, it just looks thoughtful, like a personalized piece of art." Her cheeks colored slightly. She toyed with a stirrer left on the table. "My dad taught me about flowers. He used to say there's meaning in each bloom, and part of the joy is pairing them in ways that tell a story. I guess that stayed with me." Matthew's gaze sharpened with interest. "Your father sounds like a wise man. Is he around?" Lily's expression faltered. "He passed away years ago. Both my parents did. That's why I live with my grandma." His face shadowed briefly with concern. "I'm sorry." She offered a gentle shrug, eyes cast downward for a moment. "It's been difficult, but I have memories. And Grandma, I do what I can." She paused, then switched the focus with a small sigh. "What about you? I assume your life is, well, quite different from mine." Matthew gave a wry laugh. "Yes, I suppose. I'm the CEO of a company I inherited. I expanded it, or tried to. My parents were successful entrepreneurs, but we didn't—" He hesitated, choosing his words. "I lost my mom early on, and my dad was rarely around. Everything was about business, making deals, forging alliances, chasing growth." Lily nodded slowly, seeing the flicker of unresolved emotion in his eyes. She understood that being wealthy didn't mean a person was spared from loneliness. "Sometimes it can feel like we're on two different planets," she said, "but maybe we're not as different as it seems." Matthew leaned forward, letting her words sink in. A sense of gratitude swelled within him, gratitude for her willingness to share, for this candidness that he seldom encountered in his world of polished presentations. "I think you're right," he said softly. "We might have more in common than we realize." The waiter arrived with their drinks, setting them down gently. Lily murmured her thanks and picked up the cup, inhaling the comforting scent of fresh coffee. She dared a glance at Matthew, feeling a surge of warmth at how intently he listened. He smiled, lifting his own cup. "So, here's to short breaks in busy days," he offered, raising it slightly like a toast. She mirrored the gesture, touching the rim of her cup lightly to his. And maybe, she added, with the faintest hint of a tease, to buying too many flowers? Matthew chuckled, low and genuine. Exactly. They sipped in companionable silence for a minute, letting the moment envelop them. The city outside kept its frenetic pace, but in that small cafe corner, time slowed. Lily felt the tension in her shoulders soften, as though she'd laid down a burden she'd carried for too long. Matthew, too, seemed unguarded. No business calls, no board members peering over his shoulder. Eventually, conversation found them again. They spoke of small things first, favorite flowers, daily routines, tidbits about the city. The more they shared, the easier it became. Lily learned that he liked quiet mornings and old jazz records, a fact that surprised her. Matthew discovered that she sometimes hummed lullabies she remembered from childhood while arranging flowers. Bit by bit, these tiny revelations formed a patchwork of connection. "Well," Lily said after a while, glancing at the clock on the wall, "I should get back soon. I promised Grandma I'd come home earlier today. And you—" She nodded at him. "I'm sure you have more meetings." Matthew looked genuinely disappointed. "I do. But thank you for taking the time. It was really nice." She stood, and he quickly offered to pay the bill. Lily started to protest, but he shook his head with a gentle smile, leaving enough cash to cover their drinks and a tip. Together, they stepped out of the cafe, the midday heat greeting them once more. On the sidewalk, Lily clasped the handle of her flower basket. "Thank you again," she murmured, giving him a warm smile. "For everything. The coffee, the conversation, the kindness." He took a small step closer, his voice quiet. "Lily, He paused, uncertain how to articulate the swirl of emotions. Instead, he reached into his shirt pocket, pulling out a business card. "If you ever need anything, even if it's something small, just call. I know you don't want charity, but consider it a friend offering help." She accepted the card, reading his name embossed in neat script. It felt surreal to hold such a symbol of wealth and power in her hand. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'll keep it." They parted ways with a gentle wave. Lily watched him blend into the crowd of executives and office-goers. Inside her, a curious sense of possibility bloomed, a reminder that life, for all its struggles, could still hold moments of unexpected grace. She started homeward, weaving through busy streets. Her footsteps felt lighter, as though a burden had been momentarily lifted. Somewhere behind her, the city roared on, but in her mind's eye, she held the memory of a quiet cafe, 2 cups of coffee, and a conversation that made the world seem just a little softer. Meanwhile, Matthew navigated back to his office, his tie still stuffed in his pocket. He checked his phone. No urgent crises, though a few messages from the CFO demanded attention. Nonetheless, he felt calmer than he had in ages. As he rode the elevator to his floor, he thought about Lily, about her gentle resilience. The memory of her appreciative smile played like a comforting refrain in his mind. He'd been to countless power lunches in opulent venues, but that simple coffee break with a flower girl had given him a sense of genuine warmth he rarely found in business circles. Striding toward his desk, he noticed the daisies in their vase on the corner, bright as ever. Claire tapped on his door, handing him a folder of documents. "How was your lunch break, sir?" she asked politely. A small, private smile touched his lips. "It was good, Claire," he answered, scanning the pages she'd given him. "A good reminder that some of life's most meaningful moments happen outside the boardroom." She raised her eyebrows slightly in curiosity, but refrained from questioning further. As she left, Matthew settled into his chair. He had investor calls, proposals to finalize. But for now, his mind still lingered on Lily, and how a chance meeting over a bouquet of flowers had stirred a sense of true connection. High above the busy streets, behind the glass walls of his office, Matthew pulled out a fresh notebook, jotting down a few scattered thoughts, almost like a personal journal. Words of gratitude, flickers of hope. He didn't know where this path would lead, but he knew with startling clarity that he wanted to keep walking it, side by side with the quiet strength of a woman whose life was bound to simple blooms and a caring heart. As the afternoon wore on, a faint breeze stirred the curtains near his window, carrying the summer heat away. In that gentle hush, the seeds of something deeper took root, a new chapter unfolding in both their lives, nurtured by everyday miracles and the shared humanity that neither wealth nor struggle could eclipse. O1 Pro. Você diz yes. O chat GPT disse, solicitação de O1 Promode, pensou por 2,50 section 610. For the next few days, life settled into a steady rhythm for Lily. Morning flower sales, afternoon visits home to check on Agnes, and quiet evenings spent tidying up her modest apartment. But beneath that ordinary surface, a gentle glow of possibility lingered. Every once in a while, as she surveyed the busy sidewalks for potential customers, her mind drifted to the memory of Matthew at the cafe. The warmth in his eyes, the ease with which conversation had flowed. It felt like a tiny miracle in her otherwise predictable existence. Agnes noticed, of course. Though her health remained delicate, she kept a close eye on her granddaughter's shifting moods. One evening, after Lily returned with barely any unsold flowers, Agnes gave her an encouraging nod. "You're humming again," her grandmother said, the corners of her eyes crinkling in a smile. Lily blinked. "Humming?" "Yes, dear. A tune I haven't heard you sing in a long time." Agnes studied her face. "When you were small, your father used to hum lullabies while working with the flowers. You've picked that habit back up these last few days." A slight blush warmed Lily's cheeks. "I didn't even notice." Agnes patted Lily's hand, her frail fingers trembling from exhaustion. "Whatever's stirring that music in you, don't lose it. Life's been hard on you, but it seems something is lighting up your heart." Lily swallowed, unwilling to fully confess how often her thoughts lingered on Matthew. After all, they'd only shared a single coffee and random glimpses in passing. She didn't want to overstate it or raise her own hopes too high. Still, she couldn't deny that something had shifted within her. Despite the modest success selling flowers, the money for Agnes's medications wasn't going as far as Lily hoped. One prescription's cost had spiked unexpectedly, and she'd begun worrying about whether she might need to skip certain groceries or consider taking on extra hours somewhere else. She tried not to let the anxiety show, but late at night when Agnes was asleep, Lily would tally her funds on a scrap of paper, biting her lip at the narrow margins. In her darkest moments, she considered calling the number on Matthew's business card, but each time she tucked it away again, reminding herself she didn't want charity. Even if he had sincerely offered help, Lily valued her independence. She justified it by telling herself that their paths might cross again soon in a more natural way. Meanwhile, at Cole Innovations, Matthew's own responsibilities piled up. He faced mounting pressure from the board over the philanthropic direction he'd proposed. The older members remained unconvinced, insisting that the company focus on more straightforward avenues of profit. Even the younger members were hesitant, worried that the philanthropic projects might dilute the brand's resources in a competitive market. Despite all this, Matthew found himself brimming with a newfound resolve. In previous years, he might have relented to the board's cautionary stance, choosing the safer financial route, but meeting Lily and seeing the quiet bravery she displayed each day had awakened a deeper sense of purpose. If she could fight for her grandmother's well-being with such unwavering determination, why couldn't he fight for a more compassionate business model? After a particularly heated discussion with two longtime board members, Matthew retreated to his private office. He stared at the daisies on his desk, now a bit wilted around the edges but still holding some color. He replaced them every so often with fresh ones from Lily, each bouquet a small testament to her skill and perseverance. He knew she was out there somewhere in the city, likely haggling with customers or nursing sore feet, all while carrying a calm smile. Impulsively, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through his personal contacts. He'd programmed Lily's number into it the day after their coffee, transferring the digits from her business card. He stared at the entry, debating whether it was appropriate to call, or perhaps text. But then again, she was probably busy working. Instead, he settled on an idea, something that might offer Lily more opportunities while preserving her dignity. He placed a quick call to one of his trusted managers in the city's largest floral design firm. It was a subsidiary he'd quietly acquired a year earlier, mostly to diversify Cole Innovations' portfolio. The firm specialized in high-end floral arrangements for weddings, corporate events, and luxury hotels. He explained that he had encountered a talented street florist named Lily, someone with real artistry and knowledge of flowers. Could they use extra hands on large-scale arrangements or event installations, even short-term or part-time? The manager, intrigued by Matthew's personal recommendation, agreed to meet Lily, if she was interested. Matthew felt a rush of satisfaction. This wasn't a gift or a handout. It was a lead on stable, fairly paid work. If Lily wished to remain independent, that was her choice. But at least she'd know other doors were open. By the time Matthew ended the call, he felt lighter. He could already picture Lily's reaction. Thoughtful, maybe a bit hesitant, but hopefully grateful. He resolved that next time they spoke he would present this idea. It was a risk, of course. She might interpret it as meddling, but he hoped she'd see it as a gesture of belief in her abilities. Days passed, and Lily's routine continued. She and Matthew caught glimpses of each other in passing, exchanging quick smiles, a wave, a warm, "Hello, home," but it wasn't until a crisp afternoon, under the shade of tall office buildings, that they had a moment to speak at length. She was just finishing a sale to a middle-aged accountant when Matthew approached, his demeanor relaxed but purposeful. Lily's face brightened at the sight of him. In the swirl of city noise, they instinctively stepped aside to chat, letting foot traffic move around them. "Hello, Lily," Matthew said warmly, noting the circle of color on her cheeks from the brisk walk or perhaps from anticipation. "You've been busy?" She nodded. "Yes, actually. Today's better than most. And you, how's work?" A mild shadow crossed his features. "Tense, but I'm managing." He ran a hand over his hair, then offered her a small folded envelope. I wanted to give you this. It's a contact for a floral design firm I own. Sort of. They do large events, hotels, that kind of thing. They might need someone with your expertise. I told them about you, and they're open to meeting." Lily blinked in surprise. She carefully accepted the envelope, her fingers brushing the edges. "You did that? For me?" He shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "I just think you're talented, and you deserve more stable opportunities if you want them. No pressure." For a moment, she was too stunned to respond. Her gaze dropped to the envelope in her hand. A flurry of emotions swept through her. Gratitude, fear, excitement, a trickle of pride. "You're unbelievably kind," she whispered, voice quavering with sincerity. "But are you sure I'm good enough? These high-end places usually want professionals, people who studied floral design in fancy schools." Matthew's expression softened and he reached out, almost as though to lightly squeeze her hand, but hesitated. "Don't doubt yourself, Lily. I've seen your work. Yes, I don't know every detail about large-scale event floristry, but I do know you have an eye for color, an intuition about pairing blooms, an artistry you don't see every day." She took a shaky breath, pressing the envelope gently to her chest. "Thank you. I'll consider it. Really. I will." Their eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, the bustling city vanished. Lily felt the genuine warmth in his gaze, the unspoken support that asked nothing in return. Her heart hammered in her chest, torn between excitement at the chance to improve her situation and the persistent worry of stepping outside her comfort zone. Matthew broke the silence softly. "If you ever need help making that call or scheduling a meeting, you know you can reach me, right?" She nodded. I do. Carefully, she slipped the envelope into her handbag. I'll let you know. They spoke for a few more minutes, mostly about everyday things. The autumn breeze picking up, how the traffic seemed worse than usual, Agnes's health after a new prescription tweak. Then someone nearly bumped into them, reminding them that they were standing in the middle of a busy walkway. Lily stifled a laugh, stepping aside. Matthew glanced at his watch. I have a meeting in 10 minutes, but maybe we could talk again soon? Lily smiled, eyes shining with quiet warmth. I'd like that. With that simple goodbye, they parted ways once more, each feeling a shift in the air. Lily pressed on with her day, but the envelope felt like a talisman, tangible proof that a door had opened, and all she needed was the courage to walk through it. Back at her apartment that night, Lily carefully placed the envelope on the small kitchen table. Agnes watched from her chair, coughing intermittently. "What's that, dear?" her grandmother asked when she noticed Lily eyeing it for the third time. Lily hesitated, then explained. Agnes listened intently as her granddaughter described the floral design firm, her voice equal parts hope and anxiety. "It could mean regular money, better than street sales," Lily said softly, running a hand along the envelope's edge. "But it's also big, corporate, and I'm not sure I fit in." "Yes," she exhaled, glancing at Agnes. "I don't want to rely on charity from Matthew either." Agnes's gentle laughter dissolved Lily's tension. "You said he got you a contact, not a blank check. That's not charity. It's an opportunity. And if it helps you, helps us. Lily, you have nothing to be ashamed of." "But what if it's too much for me to handle? I've never done fancy hotel arrangements or big events," Lily worried. "And I already have my routines, my spots in the city, the vendors who know me." Agnes reached for Lily's hand, grasp surprisingly firm for someone so frail. "Child, your father once told me you have a gift, a natural sense of beauty. Maybe it's time to share that gift with more people. Change can be scary, but you can't keep hiding in the same patterns out of fear." Tears stung at Lily's eyes. She nodded, swallowing hard. "You're right, Grandma." After a moment, she managed a small smile. "Maybe I'll reach out tomorrow, at least to see what they're offering." Agnes smiled back, her expression tinged with relief. "That's my Lily girl, always brave." That night, Lily turned off the lights, climbed into bed and stared at the faint city glow through her window. She pictured an elegant ballroom decked out with flowers of all shapes and hues, every arrangement bursting with color. Could she truly be part of something like that? The idea felt equal parts daunting and exhilarating. In her mind, she saw Matthew's reassuring face, encouraging her not to doubt herself. She drifted off with that thought, warmed by the possibility that a life-changing opportunity might indeed be within reach. At Cole Innovations, after a long day of negotiations, Matthew stepped away from his desk. The after-hours hush settled over the corridors, most employees having gone home. He gazed once more at the slowly wilting daisies in their vase. Tomorrow, he'd likely replace them with fresh ones from Lily, unless she needed a push to accept the design firm's offer. He hoped she would. It felt right, this idea of bridging her talent into more stable work. She'd never asked him for help, never demanded anything. That was precisely why he wanted to offer it. He recalled her wide-eyed gratitude when he handed her the envelope. There'd been a moment when he feared she might refuse outright. But even her hesitation was honest, stemming from humility and caution. Matthew admired that. In the stillness of his office, he allowed himself a rare moment of personal reflection, scribbling a note in his private journal. New worlds open in small steps. Proud of her for even considering. He closed the notebook, a faint smile on his face, then switched off the lamp. As he rode the elevator down, he wondered about the future. Would Lily find a place among lavish weddings and corporate galas, weaving her magic with blooms? Could this path lead to more closeness between them, or would it draw them into separate orbits? One step at a time, he reminded himself. He had to let her make her own choices. Stepping into the parking garage, he felt a pang of an emotion he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope, unclouded by cynicism. His heart felt light, even amidst looming business concerns and friction with the board. Let them balk at philanthropic gestures. He had found something more meaningful, an authentic bond that transcended profit. For now, that was enough to drive him forward. Morning came swiftly. Lily awoke to the city's muffled roar. She glanced at the small slip of paper she'd copied from Matthew's envelope, the phone number for the floral design firm. Her stomach fluttered with nerves. This was the day she'd decided to call, at least to inquire. Her grandmother's health bills wouldn't wait, and if there was a chance to better secure their future, she owed it to both of them to try. She dialed the number in the quiet hush before sunrise, half expecting no one to pick up. But a polite voice answered, identifying themselves as the assistant to the firm's manager. Lily introduced herself timidly. "I was told to contact you. My name is Lily Anderson," she said, nearly fumbling over her words. "Matthew Cole mentioned me. He said you might have a position." "Yes, Ms. Anderson, Mr. Cole informed us you're highly skilled," the assistant replied, calm and professional. "We'd be happy to meet and see if we can collaborate. Are you free sometime this week?" Relief mingled with a swirl of anxiety. "Yes, absolutely. Whenever works for you." They scheduled a preliminary appointment for the following afternoon. Lily ended the call, hands trembling. She pressed the phone to her chest, inhaling deeply. It was real. She had a foot in the door, her own chance to step beyond street vending into a realm she'd once thought belonged solely to the privileged. Agnes stirred, waking to Lily's excited expression. She arched an eyebrow in curiosity. Lily smiled, crossing the room to share the news in a hushed voice. "That's incredible, dear," Agnes said, voice raspy but full of pride. "You see? Opportunities come when you least expect them." Lily nodded, tears welling. Yes, an opportunity. But she also felt the weight of uncertainty. What if she disappointed them, or discovered the job clashed with the time she needed to look after Agnes? She reminded herself that one step forward was better than staying trapped by self-doubt. Bolstered by that thought, Lily hurried to dress and organize her baskets for another day of sales. She might soon be arranging flowers in grand hotel lobbies or lavish banquets. But for now, her livelihood still depended on greeting strangers on the city's busy corners. Before leaving, she texted Matthew for the first time, her fingers trembling slightly over the keypad. She composed a short, polite message. "Hi, Matthew. Just wanted to let you know I called that floral firm. Have an appointment tomorrow. Thank you again for everything. Lily." She stared at the screen a moment, then hit send. Matthew was in the middle of an early planning session when the text buzzed on his phone. Glancing discreetly, he felt a flood of satisfaction. She was taking the opportunity. He typed back, "That's great news. So proud of you. Let me know how it goes. If you need anything, I'm here." A subtle grin crossed his face, enough that Claire, who was standing beside him, gave him a curious glance. He quickly tucked the phone away, turning back to the conversation about market strategies, but inside, his thoughts soared. Lily was stepping into a bigger world, and he was glad he could help open that door. Now, he only hoped that as their worlds expanded, they'd still find space to grow closer, not drift apart. The next days would be pivotal, for Lily's budding career, for Matthew's clash with his board, and for the fragile thread of connection they'd been weaving between them. He silently resolved that no matter how busy or complicated things got, he wouldn't let her vanish from his life. She was the first person in a long time who made him believe that, beyond the suits and spreadsheets, there was a softer side worth exploring, a side that might just lead them both to a future neither had dared to imagine alone. Would you like me to continue with section 710? O1 Pro. Você disse, yes, o ChatGPT disse, solicitação de O1 Pro Mode, pensó por su sitio section 710. Lily woke up the next morning with a racing heart. Outside her window, the city was still cloaked in the bluish hues of dawn, the roads eerily calm compared to the usual hustle. She inhaled slowly, the quiet helping her gather the courage she needed. Today was her appointment at the floral design firm, the opportunity Matthew had paved the way for. She'd spent half the night imagining what the interview might entail. Rows of exotic blossoms, sophisticated arrangements, and managers who expected professional training she didn't possess. Pushing aside a flicker of anxiety, Lily slipped into the bathroom and splashed water on her face. She caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror, noticing a faint tiredness beneath her eyes. Still, there was a trace of excitement glowing there too. She forced a small smile, reminding herself of her grandmother's words, "You have a gift." She would cling to that hope, trusting that her hands, shaped by years of street vending and quiet experimentation with colors, were enough to make a good impression. By the time Lily finished dressing, in a simple blouse and a clean skirt, both carefully pressed, Agnes was awake, peering at her from the bed. A mild cough escaped her grandmother's lips, but otherwise she seemed calm. "Don't let your nerves get the best of you," Agnes advised gently. "Be confident in your talent. That's what they'll see." Lily nodded, smoothing the fabric of her skirt. "I'll do my best, Grandma. I'll head out soon, but I won't be gone all day. After the appointment, I'll come back and sell flowers if there's still time." Agnes patted Lily's hand, her voice affectionate. "We'll be all right. Go make a bright future, Lily girl." With that final boost of encouragement, Lily departed. She decided to give herself plenty of time to navigate the bus rides and possible traffic. In her messenger bag, she carried a small album with photos of her street bouquets, just in case the firm wanted to see examples of her work. She wasn't sure if it would matter, but it felt reassuring to have something tangible to show. Meanwhile, Matthew sat at his office desk, glancing at the clock more often than he'd care to admit. He wondered how Lily was faring on her way to the floral firm. Part of him wanted to text her a quick, "good luck," but he hesitated, not wanting to distract her. Instead, he buried himself in finalizing a report for a mid-morning board update. The tension with the board had intensified lately. Some members whispered that Matthew's philanthropic leanings risked overshadowing their profit goals. He intended to prove otherwise. Claire knocked softly, entering with a tablet in hand. "Sir, here are the updated slides for the board meeting," she said. "They incorporate the feedback you requested." "Thank you," Matthew replied, scanning through. The data outlined how philanthropic engagements, if planned strategically, could actually bolster the company's public image and drive long-term growth. Yet he knew the old guard might see it as too speculative. He rubbed his temple, steeling himself for another round of debate. "Everything okay?" Claire ventured, noticing the furrow in his brow. He let out a breath. "Just hoping they'll see the bigger picture," he said quietly. Then he mustered a small grin. "Also hoping a friend's morning goes well." Claire nodded, catching the nuance but not pressing the subject. "I'm sure it will," she offered simply, stepping out to let him prepare. By 9:30, Lily stood before a gleaming glass building that towered over the street. A silver plaque by the revolving doors read, "Laurel and Vine Floral Design, 8th floor." She clutched her bag, feeling both dwarfed and electrified by the modern architecture. It was nothing like the old, battered corners where she typically sold flowers. With a bracing gulp of air, she stepped inside. A polite receptionist directed Lily to a sleek elevator bank. She pressed the button for the 8th floor, heart pounding as the elevator ascended. The doors opened to reveal an elegant reception area where tall vases showcased intricate floral displays, orchids twisting around eucalyptus stems, hydrangeas fluffed in symmetrical domes. The air smelled faintly of lilies and fresh greenery, a heady perfume that made Lily's nerves hum with awe. "Welcome to Laurel and Vine," said a young woman behind the reception desk. "Are you here for an appointment?" "Yes," Lily replied, voice sounding smaller than she intended. My name is Lily Anderson. I have a 10 o'clock with Ms. Hammond. Of course, the receptionist answered, scanning a digital schedule. She'll be right with you. Please have a seat. Lily settled into a minimalist chair upholstered in plush fabric. She glanced around discreetly. Every detail exuded sophistication, from the understated wallpaper to the curated coffee table books on floral art. She reminded herself that she had something to offer. Her father's teachings, her years of practical arrangement, her intuitive sense of combining blooms. That had to count for something, even if she'd never studied at a formal institute. After a few minutes, a tall woman with short, stylishly cropped hair approached. She wore a well-fitted blazer and carried herself with the calm authority of someone used to leading a creative team. "Ms. Anderson?" the woman asked, extending a hand. "I'm Valerie Hammond, senior designer here. Come on back." Lily stood, shaking Valerie's hand. It was a firm but polite grip. She followed Valerie down a corridor lined with photos of past events, lavish weddings, grand corporate galas, even some celebrity parties. Each photo featured breathtaking displays of flowers arranged in towering arcs or delicate table centerpieces, lit by ambient lighting. Lily's throat tightened at the scale of it all. Valerie led her into a glass-walled office that overlooked a workshop area. Inside that workshop, staff members trimmed stems and arranged trial pieces for upcoming events. The hum of activity and the muted fragrance of fresh flowers set Lily's nerves both on edge and at ease, a curious mix of fear and familiarity. "Have a seat," Valerie said, gesturing to a small round table. "Matthew Cole spoke highly of your talent. He's technically our parent company's CEO, but we don't usually see him involved in smaller staffing details." That alone piqued my interest. Lily offered a soft smile, recalling the envelope Matthew had given her. "He's been very generous, but I promise I'm not just taking advantage. I really love flowers. I've been selling and arranging them on city streets for years. It's how I support my grandmother." Valerie nodded, sincerity in her gaze. "He mentioned that. Could you tell me about your experience? We normally look for formal training, but I'm open to real skill no matter where it comes from." Lily took a moment to calm her breath. Then she began describing her daily life, how she sourced blooms from local markets or small greenhouses, how she prepped them at home to ensure freshness, the care she put into color theory and fragrance combinations. She even opened her small photo album, showing examples of bouquets she'd created for passing customers. Valerie flipped through the snapshots, leaning forward with genuine interest. Lily's pictures might not have been as polished as a professional portfolio, but they exuded warmth and creativity. Each bouquet had a personal touch, clusters of wildflowers combined with delicate ribbons, or carefully selected color palettes that felt both spontaneous and harmonious. "You have a strong eye," Valerie remarked, tapping a finger on a photo of pastel roses and sprigs of lavender. "And your arrangement style is refreshingly organic." She looked up, curiosity sparking in her eyes. "Ever worked with large-scale designs? Arches, grand centerpieces, multi-day event installations?" Lily swallowed. "No, not exactly. But I'm a quick learner. I hope that counts." A flicker of a smile touched Valerie's lips. "It does. We all start somewhere. Our busiest season is approaching. Big weddings, corporate holiday parties. I might have you shadow some of our senior florists or assist in the workshop. The hours can be grueling and we often pull all-nighters before large events. Is that something you can handle?" Lily hesitated momentarily, thinking of Agnes. The unpredictability of her grandmother's health made it hard to commit to demanding schedules. But if this was her chance at better pay and growth, could she afford to say no? Valerie seemed to sense her hesitation. "I'm flexible. We can start with part-time or on a project basis. If it's a good fit, we adjust. Sound fair?" Relief washed over Lily. She nodded, voice steady. "Yes, that would be perfect, actually. Thank you." Valerie extended a hand again, a more relaxed gesture this time. I'd like to bring you in for a trial run. Let's see how you do with an upcoming event. If all goes well, we can formalize something." Lily's heart soared, a lightness flooding her limbs. She accepted the handshake, hardly believing this was real. "I won't disappoint you," she whispered, eyes glimmering. "I'm sure you won't," Valerie replied, leading Lily to a calendar pinned on the wall. She pointed to a date just a week away. "We have a mid-sized corporate function, a brand launch. We'll be creating centerpieces for 30 tables plus a reception display. Come in on Monday morning. The day before, we'll finalize details with the client. I'll pair you up with one of our lead designers." They spent the next few minutes settling basic logistics: Lily's availability, the workshop's address, an approximate schedule. Valerie then walked her through the main floor, introducing her to a few staff members and showing her the cooler where they stored massive quantities of fresh flowers. It was like stepping into a different universe, one that smelled of endless possibilities. When Lily finally exited onto the street, the midday sun felt both overwhelming and invigorating. She clutched a small folder of notes Valerie had given her, plus a temporary ID tag to show the workshop security guard next week. She wanted to cry from gratitude, from excitement, and from the lingering fear of letting them down. But mostly, she felt proud. She'd opened a door, and there was no turning back. Just after Lily left the building, Matthew's phone buzzed with a text. Checking the screen, he saw it was from her. "Interview went well. They're giving me a trial run next week. Thank you. Couldn't have done this without your help." He felt a surge of joy reading those words, standing in a corridor outside the boardroom. In mere seconds, his tense expression softened. He typed back quickly, "That's amazing news. I knew they'd see your talent. Let me know how it goes when you start." Pocketing his phone, Matthew found himself smiling. He entered the boardroom with renewed confidence, prepared to defend his philanthropic plans. If Lily could face big changes, so could he. The meeting was predictably arduous. The same skeptical voices challenged the viability of non-traditional investments. Matthew countered with data on brand value, emphasizing how socially responsible acts could pay dividends over time. He also pointed out intangible benefits, employee morale, consumer trust, a refined corporate image. One board member, a stern-faced man with a crisp accent, raised a pointed question. "But can you guarantee returns to our shareholders if we divert more funds to philanthropic or social initiatives?" Matthew met his gaze evenly. Guarantee is a strong word, yet the market is shifting. Companies with a compassionate edge often attract more loyalty. People want to align with brands that stand for something. We can be that kind of leader. Silence draped the table. Some members shifted uneasily, but no one immediately refuted him. Claire, seated nearby to take notes, discreetly flashed him an encouraging nod. The conversation wrapped without a firm conclusion, but Matthew sensed a slight thawing in their resistance. Step by step, like Lily facing her new job, he'd keep forging ahead. After the meeting, Matthew allowed himself a quiet moment in his office to reflect. Lily was about to embark on a new chapter, one that might lead her away from the street corners where he first encountered her. Would that change the fragile bond they shared? He hoped not. He wanted to remain in her life, supporting her in ways that felt respectful, not overbearing. He pictured the day when she might come home from the design firm, arms full of extraordinary flowers, brimming with confidence. The thought made him smile. Perhaps, once the dust settled, he could invite her out for dinner, something to celebrate her success and share more than just a cup of coffee. But for now, Lily needed to walk this path on her own terms, just as he had to confront the challenges in his corporate sphere. Two different worlds, yes, but maybe, if they were patient and determined, they could keep meeting in those quiet moments that bridged the gap. That evening, Lily returned home to find Agnes awake, sipping a cup of weak tea. The older woman's face lit up as Lily recounted every detail of the meeting: Valerie's kindness, the scale of the workshop, her upcoming trial run. Lily's voice trembled with both nerves and excitement, but Agnes's unwavering pride steadied her. "Your father would be beaming," Agnes said. Her eyes shone with moisture. "What a journey you've taken to get here." Lily sank into the chair beside her, gently resting her head on Agnes's shoulder. "It's still overwhelming. The hours might be tough, and I worry about leaving you alone for too long if they need me." Agnes squeezed her granddaughter's hand. "I'll manage. Perhaps the neighbor can check on me if you're gone late. Don't hold yourself back." Reassured, Lily helped her grandmother through her evening medications and warmed up a simple meal. She ate her own dinner quietly, mind flicking through the day's events. Could she truly juggle this new job, her grandmother's care, and her own mental well-being? She had no choice but to try. Later, in her tiny bedroom, Lily pulled out her phone. Matthew's earlier text glowed on the screen. She reread his congratulatory words. A part of her longed to call him, share her anxieties, and let him soothe them with his steady reassurances. But that felt too personal, and she was still shy about leaning on him for every concern. Instead, she typed a short message. "Thank you again. I'm both excited and terrified, but it's a good kind of terror, I think." She hovered over the send button, then tapped it. Seconds later, the phone vibrated in her hand. Matthew had replied almost immediately. "You've got this. One day at a time. Proud of you, Lily." Her chest warmed at his words. Setting the phone aside, she closed her eyes and listened to the distant hum of city traffic. Tomorrow she'd still be out selling flowers. She couldn't neglect that income until she was sure of steady hours at the design firm. But her heart felt lighter, as though she held a promise of something more. As Lily drifted off to sleep, she cradled that promise close. A step forward into an uncertain yet hopeful future, shaped by kindness and courage. And in another corner of the city, high above the shimmering skyline, Matthew also gazed through his penthouse window, thoughts drifting to Lily. Two people on separate roads forging onward, tethered by the quiet conviction that life could be bigger and brighter than either had once dared to dream. "Would you like me to continue with section 8 to 10? O1 Pro. Você disse yes, o chat GPT disse solicitação de O1 Pro Mod. Pensou por 3.009 section 810. The day of Lily's trial run at Laurel and Vine arrived faster than she expected. She woke before dawn, tension coiling in her stomach like a tightened spring. Even as she went through her usual motions, preparing breakfast for Agnes, sorting out a small batch of flowers to sell if she had time afterward, her mind buzzed with anticipation. She was about to step into a world she had only glimpsed through glossy photos and daydreams. Dressing carefully in practical clothes, a simple cotton blouse and dark slacks, she hoped she'd strike the right balance, neat enough to appear professional, but comfortable enough to handle the physical demands of flower arranging. Agnes, propped up on pillows, watched with quiet pride. "You'll do great," her grandmother murmured when Lily leaned in to say goodbye. "Don't forget to breathe." "I won't," Lily promised, though she already felt breathless. She left the apartment lugging a small backpack with necessities, her phone, a lightweight sweater, some snacks, and the notes from Valerie. On the bus ride over, she recalled the lavish displays she'd seen during her interview. The bus rattled through congested streets and Lily pictured herself in that workshop, cutting stems, forming centerpieces big enough to fill grand ballrooms. It stirred both excitement and the old, familiar fear. Was she truly up to this? By 7:30, Lily stood in front of the workshop's nondescript side entrance. A discreet sign read, "Deliveries," and she recalled Valerie's instructions to enter here for production days. With a firm inhale, she pushed open the heavy door, stepping into a bustling environment already alive with activity. Inside, employees hauled buckets of flowers from industrial coolers. The air smelled pungently of greenery and damp earth, with subtle floral notes weaving through. Tall metal tables stood in rows, each occupied by designers trimming and arranging. Some chatted in low voices, others worked in focused silence, their hands deft with ribbons, floral foam, and wire. A petite woman in a black apron approached Lily, giving her a polite nod. "You must be Lily. I'm Kate, the lead designer you'll be assisting today. Valerie asked me to get you started." Lily exhaled in relief. "Yes, that's me. I'm here to learn and help however I can." Kate gestured for Lily to follow her. "We have a corporate event for tonight. About 30 tables of centerpieces, plus an entrance display. Let's start with prepping the flowers." She guided Lily to a corner station where bins of roses, lilies, and greenery lined the counters. "Have you used a floral knife and stripper before?" Nodding, Lily picked up a floral stripper with practiced hands. "I work with small bouquets on the street, so I'm a bit familiar." Kate smiled, impressed. "Great. Then start by stripping leaves and thorns. We'll assemble the centerpieces next." Within minutes, Lily was immersed in a flurry of roses, rich reds and creamy whites. She deftly removed excess leaves, trimmed stems at an angle, and placed each bundle in tall buckets of water. Kate watched from the corner of her eye, occasionally offering tips. "Don't cut them too short. Keep them hydrated until the last moment." Despite the bigger scale, Lily found her nerves slowly settling. There was a comforting routine to preparing flowers, a rhythm she'd honed for years. As she worked, she caught snippets of chatter among the staff, discussions about color schemes, last-minute requests from picky clients, the scramble to meet tight deadlines. It was fast-paced, but Lily thrived on the energy. After an hour of prep, Kate guided Lily to another station where vases were lined up. They were cylindrical glass containers about 8 inches high, simple but sleek. "We're going for an elegant, minimalist style," Kate explained, handing Lily a reference sketch. It showed a tight cluster of roses and greenery forming a low dome ringed by delicate lily petals. Lily studied the sketch, then nodded. She gathered her materials, a block of soaked floral foam, the roses she'd prepped, and some sprigs of eucalyptus for subtle texture. As she placed the foam in a vase and began anchoring the roses, a sense of calm determination set in. She let her instincts guide her, balancing color and shape just as her father had taught her. Let the flowers lead, respect their natural curves. Time blurred. She had no idea how long she worked on that first centerpiece, trimming and adjusting until it matched Kate's guidelines. Eventually, Kate appeared at Lily's side, peering at the arrangement. "You're careful," Kate remarked with an approving nod. "But you have a good eye. Let's see if you can speed up. We have nearly 30 of these to finish by mid-afternoon. Then we load them into a van and deliver them to the event venue." Lily smiled, feeling a spark of pride. "I'll do my best." Kate offered a warm grin. "Valerie was right about you. Keep going." The compliment buoyed Lily's spirits. She tackled the next centerpiece with renewed confidence, building a steady workflow. The workshop's noise, clinking vases, rustling paper, occasional banter, became a comforting backdrop as she lost herself in the craft. Now and then she glanced around for helpful ideas, noticing how other designers formed more elaborate pieces with tall branches or cascading orchids. It was a whole new realm of possibilities. As lunchtime approached, Valerie herself stopped by to observe. Lily held her breath, wondering if Valerie would find fault in her work, but the senior designer nodded in approval as she studied the vases lined up on Lily's station. "They look consistent," Valerie said, gently turning one arrangement to check angles. "And you're keeping pace?" Lily wiped her brow, sweat dotting her temples from the workshop's humidity. "I'm trying. I might need a short break soon to re-energize." "Of course," Valerie replied with a polite smile. "We usually rotate lunch breaks. Just let Kate know when you're ready." Lily thanked her, heart thudding with relief. She continued working until Kate announced that Lily could step away for a meal. Grateful, Lily cleaned her station, removed her gloves, and headed to a small break room. A few other staff members sat at a table scrolling through phones or chatting softly. Lily unzipped her backpack, taking out a sandwich she'd packed. She recalled the days she used to anxiously watch the clock on the street, worrying that stepping away for even a few minutes might mean missing a sale. Here, she was part of a team, still under pressure but in a different way. She didn't have to chase down customers. The orders were already confirmed. Her job was purely to craft the best arrangements she could. While she ate, her phone buzzed with a text. Her heart skipped, guessing who it might be. Indeed, it was Matthew. "How's your first day going? Thinking of you? Hope it's not too stressful." Lily felt a rush of warmth. She typed back, "Busy but good. I'm learning so much. Thank you for checking in." A moment later, he replied, "Glad to hear it. Rooting for you. Keep me posted." She smiled at the screen, then set the phone aside, not wanting to be rude to her co-workers. Yet the brief exchange comforted her, a reminder that someone outside these walls cared about her progress. Shortly after lunch, Lily resumed work. The pace intensified. Flowers had to be finished, meticulously checked, and packed into crates. Kate enlisted Lily to help load a van around 3 o'clock. Carefully, they placed the centerpieces in custom carriers to prevent spillage or damage. Lily's arms ached, but her spirit soared. She was part of something substantial. As they stacked the final pieces, Kate turned to Lily with a slight grin. "You did well today, truly. I can tell you're not afraid of hard work." Lily, catching her breath, ran a hand across her forehead. "Thank you. I know I have a lot to learn, but it's been incredible." Kate nodded, eyes warm. "Valerie mentioned bringing you on for more shifts if this event goes smoothly. We'll see how everything looks at the venue, but I'm optimistic." The adrenaline from the intense day pulsed in Lily's veins. She stepped out of the workshop into late afternoon sunlight, muscles sore but heart brimming with satisfaction. She'd earned some wages for the day, more than she might have made on the street, and she'd proven, at least to herself, that she could adapt to a professional floral environment. She realized she still needed to check on Agnes. Balancing these new hours might become challenging if her grandmother's condition worsened, but for now, she wanted to relish this small triumph. As she boarded the bus home, Lily considered buying a little treat for Agnes, fresh fruit or maybe a pastry, some tangible sign that life was improving. Matthew wrapped up a late conference call just as the sun dipped below the skyline. He rubbed his eyes, exhausted but compelled to check his phone. He wondered if Lily had finished her first day. His phone remained silent, no new messages, so he assumed she was still busy or on her way home. Part of him felt an unexpected longing to see her, even if only briefly. Maybe take her for another coffee to hear about her day. But he also knew pushing too hard might make her uncomfortable. Lily prided herself on independence. He settled for sending a short text. "Hope your trial run went well. Let me know how you feel about it when you get a chance." Then, closing his office laptop, Matthew decided to call it a day. Grabbing his jacket, he stepped out into the evening air, feeling the weight of corporate stress lift slightly. The memory of Lily's enthusiastic messages bolstered him. If she could flourish under new challenges, he could muster the energy to fight for his philanthropic vision. On the drive home, he passed a few intersections where once he'd spotted Lily hawking flowers. Now those corners held different vendors, selling trinkets or street food. It stirred a slight nostalgia. He recalled that first time he truly saw her, standing under the glare of traffic lights, basket in hand, determination shining in her eyes. She was still the same Lily, he reminded himself, but now discovering broader horizons. He hoped she'd remain that earnest, glowing presence, whether surrounded by the city's hectic streets or the lavish halls of big events. Arriving home at dusk, Lily fumbled with the apartment key, balancing a small bag of groceries. She opened the door to find Agnes awake and reading an old newspaper by the dim lamp. "Grandma," Lily called softly, stepping forward. "I'm sorry I'm late. We had a big order to deliver." Agnes's face brightened. "You're here now. Come, Tell me everything. And sit. You look wiped out." Lily set the groceries on the kitchen counter, an apple, a couple of pears, and a small pastry box. Then she sank onto the couch, boots still on, exhaling in relief. The worn cushions and Agnes's gentle presence felt like a comforting embrace after a whirlwind day. She recounted it all in a rush, how she prepped endless roses, how Kate showed her new techniques for large centerpieces, the hum of camaraderie in the workshop. "It was hard work, Grandma," she admitted, massaging her sore wrist. "But it felt right, like I was doing something real, beyond just scraping by." Agnes reached out to pat Lily's knee. "I'm so proud of you, dear. And they paid you for your time?" Lily nodded, a small grin forming. "Yes, a decent day rate. More than I earn in some weeks on the street. If they keep me on, we might not have to worry so much about your meds." A wave of relief crossed Agnes's face. "That would be a blessing. Just don't forget you need rest too. Your health matters." "I won't," Lily murmured, though she realized how drained she felt. The excitement had overshadowed her exhaustion, but now it all hit at once. She stood to fix them both a light dinner, deciding to save the pastry box for dessert, a small celebration. After they ate, Lily checked her phone. Matthew's message glowed on the screen, waiting. "Hope your trial run went well. Let me know how you feel about it when you get a chance." She smiled, typing back. "It was great. Tiring, but I loved it. Thank you again. I'll fill you in tomorrow if you're free." Pressing send, she allowed herself a surge of affection for the man who believed in her so fiercely. She slipped the phone into her pocket and began cleaning up, her mind drifting to what tomorrow might bring. She'd probably return to her usual street vending, unless Laurel and Vine called her back sooner. And perhaps, if timing allowed, she and Matthew could talk more, maybe even see each other in person. As the night deepened, Lily tucked Agnes into bed and made sure the apartment was secure. Then she retreated to her room, heart still fluttering with the day's exhilaration. On her tiny bedside table sat a small cluster of leftover daisies she'd taken from the workshop, an unassuming arrangement but one that represented promise. Smoothing the blanket over her legs, Lily let out a content sigh. The future was still uncertain. Agnes's health, the question of whether Laurel and Vine would offer steady work, and the subtle evolution of her relationship with Matthew. But for the first time in a long while, she felt momentum carrying her forward, a sense that life was unfolding with possibility rather than just survival. She wondered briefly if Matthew felt the same kind of hope. He bore his own burdens, managing a powerful company, facing a skeptical board, trying to carve a path that balanced profit with compassion. Yet she sensed that same spark in him, an eagerness to see the world not as it was, but as it could be. Before drifting to sleep, Lily whispered a silent thanks to her father, who had passed on his love for flowers, to Agnes, who had raised her with unwavering support, and to Matthew, whose chance encounter had shifted her life's trajectory. She vowed to face each new challenge with the same resolute tenderness she poured into every bloom she touched. And somewhere across the city, in a penthouse bathed in the glow of distant streetlights, Matthew was likely thinking of her too, restless, hopeful, and quietly rejoicing in the knowledge that they were each rewriting their own stories, one day, one connection, one small gesture at a time. Would you like me to continue with section 9 to 10? O1 Pro. Você disse yes, tu dois. O ChatGPT disse solicitação para o O1 Pro. Pensou por 10 minutos, section 9-10. Morning light stole into Lily's apartment through a narrow gap in the curtains, painting a soft stripe across the worn floor. She stirred from sleep with far less heaviness than usual, her thoughts quickly turning to her grandmother and to her new, tenuous position at Laurel and Vine. Yesterday's successful trial run still glowed in her mind, a sense of accomplishment warming her chest. Agnes dozed nearby, breathing shallow but steady. Lily rose quietly, careful not to wake her yet. She moved into the tiny kitchen nook to brew a cup of tea, the kettle's gentle hiss marking the start of a new day. Today would be less intense. No major event scheduled at the floral design firm. Valerie had suggested Lily keep her phone nearby in case a last-minute job cropped up. Otherwise, Lily still had her street flowers to sell. The routine felt almost comforting, as if she had one foot in her old world and the other stepping into new territory. She carried the tea to Agnes, whose eyes fluttered open. Despite the persistent fatigue etched across her face, Agnes greeted Lily with a smile. "Good morning, dear. You're up bright and early again." Lily settled on the edge of the bed. "I slept well for once," she admitted softly. "Like I finally have a plan." Agnes nodded, sipping the tea with trembling hands. "That's what hope can do. It eases the weight on our shoulders." They exchanged updates on how Agnes was feeling. Her joints still ached, the cough lingered, but she felt stable enough to spend the day reading or listening to the old radio. Lily made a mental note to check on the pharmacy costs soon. If Laurel and Vine kept her on regularly, maybe she wouldn't have to skip meals anymore just to cover pills. The thought was both liberating and bittersweet. A dull beep on Lily's phone startled them. She grabbed it off the kitchen counter, a text from Kate at Laurel and Vine. "Hey Lily, last night's event was a success. The client loved our centerpieces. Great job yesterday. No big projects today, but are you free tomorrow afternoon? We might have a small function. We'll confirm soon." Lily felt relief flood through her. She typed back quickly, "Wonderful news. I'm around tomorrow. Just let me know." She set the phone down, noticing that her hands were trembling lightly with excitement. This was real, not some fleeting dream. She could carve out a place for herself in a proper floral studio. Something about that promise made her exhale with renewed confidence. Agnes, catching the expression on Lily's face, reached out. "Good news?" "They loved the arrangements," Lily replied, voice soft with disbelief. "They might need me again tomorrow. I think this could be a new chapter for us, Grandma." Agnes's eyes glimmered with tears. "I'm so proud of you, Lily girl." Across town, Matthew had thrown himself into an early workout, an unusual break in his typical routine of straight-to-office mornings. He'd woken before sunrise, unsettled by dreams in which he was juggling an endless series of business proposals in one hand and lilies in the other. In the dream, the flowers would wilt if he didn't tend them, the proposals would collapse if he didn't sign them. It was a strange metaphor, but as he cycled through a series of push-ups on his penthouse floor, he recognized it reflected his inner tension, balancing corporate duties with a more heartfelt cause. He tried to recall if Lily had messaged him about her second day at the firm. They'd texted briefly the evening before, but she hadn't mentioned when or if she'd return. Rising from his workout, breath ragged, he told himself not to pry. If she needed him, she would reach out. He took a long shower, letting the water pummel away his worries, then changed into a crisp shirt and slacks. By 8:30, he was seated in his corner office, reviewing email. The usual swirl of memos, meeting requests, and board concerns greeted him. He also saw a short note from one of the philanthropic committees he'd assembled. They were ready to present a pilot program that offered vocational training in underserved areas, exactly the kind of initiative that had become dear to Matthew's heart. But he knew it would face an uphill battle with the board. Another day, another wave of objections. His phone chimed with an incoming text. His heart leapt, hoping it was Lily. Instead, it was Claire reminding him that the CFO needed final numbers for the quarterly budget by noon. Matthew sighed, forcing himself to refocus. Just as he dove into spreadsheets, however, his phone buzzed again. This time, indeed, a message from Lily. "Good morning. The firm liked our arrangements. No big project today, so I'm back on the streets for a bit, but maybe working there again tomorrow. Thank you, truly." A grin broke out on Matthew's face. He typed a quick reply. "That's fantastic. I'm so glad." If you're around the finance district today, maybe I'll swing by. Buy some flowers I probably don't need. Keep me posted." Lily decided to start the day near a popular pedestrian alley lined with coffee shops. Tourists and office workers often mingled there in search of pastries or a quick caffeine fix, which made it a decent spot to sell her remaining flower stock. She loaded up a small supply: daisies, roses, and the last few sprigs of baby's breath she'd purchased earlier in the week. She arrived at the alley by mid-morning. Already, groups of people hustled up and down the cobblestones, lattes in hand. Lily found a spot beneath a tall awning, setting down her basket. She arranged her blooms in a pleasing display, signaled a soft, "fresh flowers here" to passers-by, and patiently awaited interest. A couple of students giggled as they bought a rose for their friend's birthday. A harried executive paused to snag a small bouquet for a colleague's farewell party. Lily made friendly small talk, her previous day at the design firm giving her an extra dash of enthusiasm. She no longer felt locked in an endless hustle for pennies. She had a potential future, yet she wasn't ready to abandon her roots entirely. The street had taught her resilience, had shaped her into someone who valued human connection. Near noon, as the crowd thinned slightly, Lily glanced up to see a familiar figure approaching. Matthew, tie loosened, sleeves rolled, wove through the foot traffic with a faintly apologetic grin. Her heart did a little flip at how natural it felt to see him here again. He stopped a few paces away, smiling. "A rose, maybe?" She rolled her eyes playfully. "How many bouquets does that make now?" "You'll have to open your own flower shop soon." He chuckled, stepping closer. "I keep them at home and in my office. And maybe I've given a few to the staff," he admitted, looking not at all remorseful. "Anyway, how's it going?" She gestured to her half-empty basket. "Decent. Sold enough to pay for groceries at least. But I'm mostly just passing time until the firm calls me back for another event." Matthew's gaze warmed. "Sounds like you're balancing both worlds." Lily shrugged. "I need the money from the street sales. The new job isn't guaranteed to be daily, it's more on call. But I'm grateful it's there." He nodded, understanding her practical stance. "Let me buy a rose or two. I'm seeing a board member later. Maybe it'll soften him up." A wry smile tugged at his lips. She handed him a pair of blush-pink roses, tying a bit of ribbon around the stems. As he slipped her the payment, Lily remembered just how much his generosity had shaped her current path. They exchanged a quick, knowing look. "Are you free later?" Matthew asked softly, keeping his tone casual. "Maybe for coffee? I'd like to hear more about your first day at the firm in detail." Lily hesitated, glancing at her watch. Agnes was stable and she'd already sold a good chunk of her flowers. She could manage a short break without guilt. "Sure," she said, offering a shy smile. "I'd like that." They set a time, 2:30, in the same cozy cafe where they'd first chatted. Matthew left to handle his midday obligations, promising not to be late. As Lily watched him go, a gentle warmth spread through her chest. She'd never imagined that in the whirlwind of her struggles a simple connection could bring such comfort. By 2:15, Lily had closed up shop for the day. She placed her unsold blooms carefully in her basket, planning to bring them home or maybe donate them to a nearby shelter if they didn't sell. The idea of meeting Matthew still gave her a swirl of excitement and nerves. It was just coffee, but something about sitting across from him, free to talk about her life without hustle or tension. It felt precious. She arrived at the cafe a few minutes early, picking the same table by the window. The interior smelled of brewed coffee and fresh pastries, and the mid-afternoon lull meant only a few patrons lingered with laptops or whispered conversations. Lily placed her basket under the table, smoothing her blouse. She hoped the day's efforts hadn't left her looking too disheveled. Right at 2:30, Matthew appeared, glancing around until he spotted her. She raised a hand, and he approached with that easy, genuine smile she was beginning to associate with him. He wore a slightly rumpled suit, a testament to a busy day, but it did nothing to hide the warmth in his expression. "Hi," he said, sinking into the chair opposite her. "Sorry if I look like I wrestled with a stack of paperwork, because I did." She laughed quietly. "I understand. I've been wrestling with daisies and tourists all day. Coffee might fix us both." They ordered their drinks, 2 cappuccinos this time. Once the waiter left, Matthew leaned forward, elbows on the small table. "So," he said, "tell me everything. How'd the event go yesterday?" A proud flush rose on Lily's cheeks. She found herself recounting every detail: the early prep, the station with rows of vases, how Kate instructed her on color balance and foam placement. She spoke about the intense push to finalize arrangements before the van arrived, and the sense of accomplishment when they stacked the final pieces for delivery. Matthew listened with rapt attention, nodding at points, asking a few questions about the process, the design choices, how it felt to work at such scale. Lily's enthusiasm shimmered. She hardly noticed the cappuccinos arriving, so immersed she was in describing the workshop's hum and the floral artistry that had enthralled her. He chimed in occasionally, referencing his knowledge of the firm's structure, but mostly he let her talk, supportive eyes locked on hers. "That's amazing," he said when she paused for breath. "I knew you'd shine. Kate and Valerie are lucky to have you. I bet they'll ask you back often." She took a sip of her cappuccino, savoring the foamy warmth. "I hope so. It feels like a whole new world, but also, I don't want to abandon the people who rely on my street sales. It's where I started, you know?" Matthew tilted his head thoughtfully. "I understand. There's something genuine about that direct contact with folks. Maybe you can do both for a while, until you're sure?" She nodded, relief easing her shoulders. He never pressured her to pick one path. Instead, he encouraged her to find her own balance. It struck her how different he was from the typical executives she'd seen rushing past her on the street. He actually listened, valued her perspective. "How are things on your end?" she asked, shifting the focus. "You mentioned a tough board meeting." He sighed, swirling his cappuccino with a spoon. "Tough is an understatement. Some of the board remains fixated on short-term profits. They don't see the potential of investing in philanthropic or socially driven projects. I keep trying to show them how times are changing." Lily watched him carefully, glimpsing a hint of weariness behind his confident demeanor. "That must be frustrating. You want to help people, but you're stuck proving it's beneficial in a monetary sense, too." Matthew gave a short laugh. "Exactly. It's a delicate dance. I can't just throw corporate funds at good causes without showing returns, or I risk being replaced. But I also can't keep ignoring the bigger impact we could make." She reached across the table impulsively, resting a gentle hand on his forearm. "You'll find a way. You're smart and passionate, and there's value in compassion even if the board can't see it yet." He looked at her hand, then lifted his gaze to meet hers. For a moment, the rest of the cafe faded. In that shared glance, Lily felt they understood each other's struggles deeply. 2 different worlds, but the same yearning to change something, within themselves and for others. She withdrew her hand, feeling a flutter in her chest. "Sorry," she murmured, cheeks warming. "I didn't mean to." Matthew shook his head, a soft smile tugging at his lips. "Don't apologize. I appreciate it. It's good to know someone believes in me, just like I believe in you." The moment held a tender quiet. They both sipped their cappuccinos, letting the significance settle. Eventually, conversation resumed. Lighter now, small jokes about workplace mishaps, questions about Lily's grandmother and Matthew's daily routines. The more they spoke, the more natural their closeness felt. "So," Lily said eventually, peeking at the time on her phone, "I should get back soon to check on Grandma. She's stable, but I don't like leaving her too long." Matthew nodded, setting his empty cup aside. "Of course. I have a late meeting too, but this was nice. Thank you for fitting me in." She smiled, gathering her basket. "I'm glad we did this. It's good to talk, away from the rush of everything." They stood, and Matthew insisted on covering the bill, though Lily politely offered to split it. He merely gave her a mock stern look until she relented. As they stepped onto the sidewalk, a mild autumn breeze rustled through the buildings. The day's warmth was waning, sky tinted a pale gold. Passers-by weaved around them, a swirl of suits, strollers, and backpacks. "Want me to walk you a few blocks?" Matthew asked. "I'm heading that way for my meeting." She nodded. "Sure, that'd be nice." Side by side, they strolled through the city. Lily found herself inexplicably comfortable with the silence that fell between them, each lost in private thoughts, yet aligned in step. She realized how rarely she had walked with anyone who didn't rush or dismiss her. At an intersection, they paused for the light. Matthew turned to her, a question on his lips, but before he could speak, a man in a hurry shouldered past them, nearly knocking Lily's basket from her hand. "Hey, watch it!" Matthew snapped, protective reflex kicking in. The man barely glanced back, muttering an apology. Lily steadied her basket, blinking in surprise. "It's okay," she said softly, though her heart pounded at the sudden jolt. Matthew's jaw tightened. Then he exhaled, forcing calm. "Sorry, I just can't stand seeing people shove you aside like you're invisible." A wave of old hurt flickered in Lily's eyes. "I'm used to it, honestly. Been shoved aside plenty of times, physically and metaphorically." He studied her face. "You shouldn't have to get used to it. You deserve respect. Everyone does." The walk sign lit up and they crossed the street. Lily felt the subtle tension in Matthew's posture. She guessed he was grappling with more than just a rude passerby. Maybe all the times he'd watched people ignoring her on the corner, or all the times someone with less privilege got overlooked. She squeezed his arm gently, a quiet reassurance that she was all right. 2 blocks later, they reached the spot where their paths diverged. Lily's bus stop beckoned on one side, while Matthew's corporate tower loomed on the other. They stopped, reluctance hanging between them. "Thank you for the coffee," Lily said, smiling softly. "I'll let you know if I get called in tomorrow. And maybe you can let me know how your board meeting goes?" Matthew nodded, meeting her gaze. "Deal. Take care of yourself and Agnes, okay?" She gave a grateful nod. "I will." Without overthinking, she leaned in to give him a brief, light hug, just an arm around his shoulders in a friendly gesture. He responded by gently placing a hand on her back, neither of them lingering too long, but the warmth of that contact spoke volumes. They parted, Lily heading toward the bus stop, Matthew turning toward his office building. As Lily boarded, she glanced back once to see him standing there, hands in his pockets, watching to ensure she got on safely. It struck her how drastically life had shifted since the day their worlds first intersected. Once, he'd been just another car passing by, tinted window hiding a powerful businessman. Now he was a friend, maybe more than that, someone who cared enough to stand up for her when the world shoved too hard. During the bus ride home, Lily gazed out the window, a soft smile playing on her lips. Tomorrow might bring another chance at the design firm. Even if it didn't, she sensed a promise forming like a bud preparing to bloom, an upward climb, piece by piece, into a life where her grandmother could find peace and Lily could find her place. And at the edges of that vision stood Matthew, forging his own path toward a more compassionate business realm, each step echoing the unwavering support they shared. She closed her eyes, allowing the hum of the bus to lull her. Another day, another subtle miracle. If anyone had told her a month ago that hope and warmth could bloom so unexpectedly, like daisies through a crack in concrete, she'd have smiled politely, but remained skeptical. Now, she believed, in flowers, in second chances, and in a man whose quiet admiration had become as steady as sunlight, guiding her toward the future she deserved. Would you like me to continue with Section 10, Hood 10, ou 1 Pro? Você disse, yes, ou ChatGPT disse, Solicitação de promode. Terminou de refletir. Section 10 to 10. Over the following weeks, Lily's life became a blend of old and new. Early mornings often found her setting up her flower basket on familiar street corners, greeting passers-by with a gentle, "Fresh flowers?" in her usual patient way. Some days she received a call or text from Laurel and Vine, an upcoming event, an important client who needed last-minute centerpieces, and she'd hurry to the workshop, putting her skill and dedication to use. Each successful project boosted her reputation at the firm, and Valerie frequently commended her for creativity and reliability. Agnes, while still frail, beamed with renewed optimism. Every time Lily left for another shift at the studio, her grandmother would wave proudly from the window. "You're blossoming, Lily girl," she would say, voice thick with affection. Lily soaked up that encouragement, determined to use every ounce of opportunity to improve their situation. Meanwhile, across the city's corporate district, Matthew inched forward with his own vision for coal innovations. He juggled tight profit projections with carefully crafted philanthropic proposals, hoping to steer the massive company toward meaningful social impact. Though the board remained divided, Matthew's persistent efforts were starting to bear fruit. Some directors began to see the merit of brand loyalty rooted in genuine community support. He framed it as a long-term investment, a future in which coal innovations became a household name associated with progress and compassion. Whenever Lily and Matthew had spare moments, an hour for coffee, a free evening to grab a quick meal, they'd gravitate together as naturally as two vines intertwining. They spoke of work, of dreams, of small joys, and occasional fears. Lily worried about Agnes's health setbacks and the irregular schedule at Laurel and Vine. Matthew confided in her about board members who questioned every charitable initiative. Their conversations, whether serious or light-hearted, wove a shared intimacy that soothed the tension from their separate worlds. One golden afternoon, Lily stood outside Laurel and Vine's workshop, having just finished helping with a grand wedding installation. She let out a tired but content sigh, gazing at the metal door that led to the bustling interior. She'd been there long enough now that the staff regarded her as part of the team, trusting her to handle intricate designs. Valerie had hinted that a more permanent position might be possible soon, complete with benefits and a steady wage. The very thought both dazzled and terrified her. If she truly joined the firm full-time, she'd have to give up daily street sales. Yet the financial stability could transform her life and Agnes's care in ways she'd hardly dared to imagine. Lily's phone buzzed, drawing her attention. She retrieved it to see a text from Matthew. "Done with my board meeting. Went better than expected. I think I'm making headway. Free to celebrate? Dinner, maybe?" She couldn't suppress a grin, warmth cascading through her. She typed back quickly, "Yes. Just finished a big project here, too. I'm near the workshop. Where should we meet?" His reply came almost instantly. "I'll pick you up in 20. Been wanting to try a small Italian place nearby. Sound good?" She slipped the phone into her pocket, feeling a thrill ripple under her skin. Dinner with Matthew felt like a milestone, more personal than a brief coffee, more relaxed than a rushed lunch. She checked her reflection in the workshop's glass door, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. Her attire was simple, jeans and a loose blouse, dotted with faint petals or flecks of leaves that had clung to her during the day's labors. Well, no time to change now. She told herself it was fine. Matthew had seen her in far more worn outfits when she was selling flowers on the street. 20 minutes later, a sleek sedan pulled up. Matthew stepped out, dressed less formally than usual, no tie, sleeves rolled. His face lit with a smile the moment he spotted her. She waved, heart galloping in a mix of anticipation and comfort. "You look happy," he remarked, leading her to the passenger side. "Tired, but definitely happy." Lily chuckled softly. "I am." That wedding setup was tough. Tall centerpieces, a floral arch, everything. But seeing it complete felt amazing. He nodded. and I managed to push a new social outreach plan past half the board. It's just a pilot, but they're letting me start somewhere." His voice brimmed with quiet triumph. They slid into the car, heading toward the small Italian restaurant Matthew had mentioned. The drive was brief, the sky overhead a painting of orange and lavender clouds. Lily took a moment to study Matthew's profile as he navigated the winding streets. She admired how someone of his wealth and power showed such genuine care. For her, for philanthropic causes, for anything that connected him to a deeper sense of purpose. Outside the restaurant, they stepped onto a cobblestone sidewalk lined with flowering vines. The space inside was cozy, candlelit, with checkered tablecloths that lent a rustic charm. A friendly hostess seated them at a corner table near a window, which offered a view of the setting sun's final glow. The soft hum of conversation and clinking silverware enveloped them, creating a gentle cocoon of privacy. After ordering pasta for Lily, a grilled dish for Matthew, they leaned in, sharing the highlights of their days. Lily described the floral arch in detail, her gestures animated. Matthew recounted how he framed the social outreach plan, persuading at least a few skeptics to give it a chance. Their faces shone with mutual pride, each celebrating the other's victory. "You know," Lily said when their meals arrived, "a few months ago I never would have believed I'd be here, sitting in a nice place talking with you about future plans. I thought my life would always be day-to-day survival." Matthew reached across the small table, fingertips brushing her wrist. "I feel the same. My world revolved around boardrooms and acquisitions. I didn't expect to find someone who makes me see beyond that." Her cheeks flushed at the tenderness in his voice. They ate slowly, savoring each bite. The flavors were rich, homemade sauces, fresh herbs. Between mouthfuls, Lily asked about Matthew's next steps with the board. He told her he'd keep pushing for a balanced approach, profit and philanthropy, growth that didn't ignore human stories. She confided that Valerie might offer her a permanent spot at Laurel and Vine, but she was nervous about committing fully, worried about leaving behind the people who depended on her affordable flowers in the street. "You have such a loyal heart," Matthew observed gently. "But you need to take care of yourself and your grandmother. A stable job could change everything for you." She nodded, swirling pasta on her fork. "True. I'm just used to independence, you know?" He understood. After all, she'd built her entire life on self-reliance, forging her path in a city that seldom offered mercy. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you," he said simply, and Lily believed him. After finishing their entrees, they lingered over desserts, tiramisu for him, a small gelato for her. Conversation turned nostalgic, each sharing little anecdotes from their childhood. Matthew recalled trying to run a business in his backyard, charging neighborhood kids for lemonade. Lily recounted adventures with her father, learning the names of wildflowers near the river. They laughed over these memories, forging a deeper intimacy with every word. Eventually, the waiter approached with the bill. Matthew naturally insisted on paying. Lily gave him a playful scowl. "I'll treat you next time," she warned, though he just grinned, shrugging off her protest. They stepped outside to find the sky now fully dark, stars peeking between high-rises. A gentle breeze carried the scent of night-blooming jasmine from a nearby planter. Lily hugged herself lightly, feeling the pleasant crispness of evening. Matthew touched her shoulder. "Should we walk a bit? Or I can drive you home if you're tired." She considered Agnes, but it wasn't too late. Her grandmother likely wanted Lily to enjoy this moment. "A short walk?" she suggested. "Then I'll call the bus or a ride. Grandma's still stable." He nodded, and they began strolling down the quiet street. Their footsteps resounded gently on the stone pavement. Now and again, a passing couple offered them a kind smile. The city lights created a soft glow around them, transforming the urban landscape into something almost magical. Lily nestled closer to Matthew, a rare display of affection she felt safe enough to show. He responded by sliding an arm around her waist, pulling her ever so gently to his side. She felt his warmth, his steady heartbeat, and for a moment, her own heart fluttered with a sweetness she struggled to name. "I don't know what this is," she murmured, half to herself, half to him, "but it feels right." He pressed a soft kiss to the top of her head, barely more than a brush of lips. "Me either," he whispered, voice hoarse with emotion. "But I want to keep finding out." They moved along the street like that, close and unhurried, each step weaving a deeper sense of connection. Their differences, his status, her struggles, felt smaller beneath the vastness of stars overhead. They were simply two souls who'd met unexpectedly, brought together by a city's chaos and the fragile resilience of a young flower girl's spirit. When they reached a quiet corner where Lily could hail a bus, they turned to face each other. Matthew studied her eyes, his breath visibly catching. "If I ask you to let me see you home, would you let me?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, that'd be nice." Usually she guarded her personal space fiercely, but tonight her heart felt open. He led her to his car, keeping the conversation light but warm as he drove. Outside her building, a place worlds away from his penthouse, he parked. She tensed slightly, worried about what he might think of the run-down facade, the flickering stairwell light. But he showed no hint of judgment, only concern for her safety. "I'll walk you up," he said, switching off the engine. The climb was short, the hallway dim. She unlocked the door quietly. Inside, Agnes dozed in the small living room, her breathing steady. Lily exhaled relief at seeing her grandmother resting peacefully. Matthew lingered at the threshold, as though unsure if he should step in or remain respectful of her space. Lily turned back to him, mustering a small but warm smile. "Thank you for tonight," she whispered, conscious of not waking Agnes. He nodded, voice low. "It's my honor. I'd do anything to see that smile of yours." Her heart flipped, emotions swirling. For a moment she considered inviting him to meet Agnes formally, but the timing felt too delicate. Agnes might be embarrassed about her weakened state. So Lily simply leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to Matthew's cheek. He froze, then closed his eyes briefly, savoring the closeness. "Good night, Matthew," she breathed, stepping back. He opened his eyes, a quiet intensity glowing in them. "Good night, Lily." She watched him go, the hallway echoing with his footsteps descending the stairs. For a long moment she stood in the doorway, heart pounding. Then she closed the door softly, turning to Agnes, who was now stirring. "Is that you, Lily?" Agnes mumbled, blinking in the dim light. "Yes, Grandma, I'm home." Lily approached, helping her grandmother settle. Agnes peered at Lily, noticing the faint flush across her cheeks, the lingering sparkle in her eyes. "You look happy, peaceful." Lily huffed a small laugh, unable to hide her smile. "I am, Grandma." Agnes nodded, a knowing look crossing her features. She said nothing more, simply resting her head against the cushions. Lily brushed a hand over Agnes's brow, sending a silent prayer of thanks for this moment of stillness and comfort. She changed into comfortable clothes, then tiptoed into her tiny room. As she settled onto her bed, she realized how much had changed. Her grandmother's health was still precarious, her finances still tight, but hope now thrived in her chest like a vibrant bloom that refused to be uprooted. She was building a future with every new arrangement at Laurel and Vine, every thoughtful text from Matthew, and every small act of resilience that had shaped her life thus far. Exhaustion draped over her in a soothing wave. Before sleep claimed her, she lingered on the memory of Matthew's gentle arm around her waist, the low timbre of his voice promising he believed in her. She felt safe, no longer just a flower girl in the big city, but a woman on the brink of new chapters, supported by someone who saw past her circumstances to the heart of who she was. In the days to come, obstacles would still arise. boardroom battles, medical setbacks, and the daunting question of whether Lily could fully transition from street vendor to floral designer. Yet both she and Matthew had discovered that chance meetings could birth profound connections, that kindness could melt barriers, and that love, delicate yet tenacious, could bloom in even the harshest environments. And so, as the city outside continued its restless churn, Lily drifted into peaceful slumber, holding on to the unwavering belief that they were forging a path together, however uncertain, yet undeniably real, a path woven by faith in each other's strength and the quiet courage that whispered that yes, they could transcend differences, face challenges, and build a life that thrived on tenderness and unwavering respect. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.